Welcome to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and we are once again live from State of Mind Studios, where we will be covering the entire match today against Kilmarnock. And the panel, the pundits today, to my right, Kevin Graham. Welcome back, Kevin.
Hiya, Paul. Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure,
Definitely.
Kevin. Colin Watt, you're back.
I know, it's as if I've got a bed out here. I'm here quite frequently.
It is quite a nice place to be, though. And making his debut at the State of Mind Studios, David Slight. Welcome to the show, David.
Hi, Paul. Good to be on board.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you here, and hopefully you think and you have a look around the studio and you realise that we mean business this season, a bit like Celtic.
A very well appointed studio, I must say. Very, very impressive. All the kit here that you need.
Absolutely. Right, guys, let's have a look at the lineup. Colin, run through the lineup for us.
So in goals, making his debut, we have Vasilis Barkas, and that is the only change from the team that started the season against Hamilton. Once again, we go with a 4-2-3-1. We've got Julian and Taylor alongside Frimpong and Ayer as your back four. Brown and McGregor playing in those sort of defensive midfield roles. Elyounoussi, Forrest, Forrest and Christie is your three behind Edward up front. Kevin, only one change from last week. It was the kind of change we predicted with Scott Bain dropping to the bench. Any surprises there?
I'm not really surprised that obviously Barkas only came in a couple of days before the start of the season last week, and Lenny's a wee bit pragmatic that way. There's probably going to be no way that he would throw him in. So a week's training, if he's impressed in training this week, then I'm looking forward to seeing him. The team played well last week. I didn't expect any changes for the starting 11. We've got to build up for these Champions League qualifiers as well. So if Lennon thinks that's his strongest 11, then he has to give them game time.
Yeah, and David, there's only one change to the bench as well. We see Scott Robertson coming in for Tom Roderick. Do you think the surface has got a part to play in that?
Probably, although it's becoming an increasing problem, isn't it? With so many away games on artificial surfaces. It was always a problem for Jozo Simunovic when he was in the Celtic setup, and it's been a problem for some time for Tom Rogic as well. So, yeah, that probably has played a part, but good opportunity for young Scott Robertson to perhaps show what he can do if he gets a chance. And he impressed. He impressed to a degree during that pre-season game against Hibs. Acquitted himself pretty well. So we'll never know unless we throw these guys in at the deep end, find out what they can do.
How did you feel that he performed over in Cluj?
It takes me back, that game over in Cluj, Paul. Right enough. I thought he did okay. That was a kind of tough game. It was a dead rubber. The only competitive tie away from home that Celtic lost last season in Europe, I think I'm right in saying.
Yeah.
But I thought Scott Robertson acquitted himself pretty well on the night, notwithstanding the 2-0 defeat. It was perhaps other areas of the team that let us down on that particular evening. But it was a difficult occasion with the team already having qualified from the group stages.
Absolutely. I mean, looking at that team, I think leading up to it, Colin, I was pushing for bringing Encham back in, and hopefully we will see an appearance from Encham today. But bringing Robertson in, the big question is around Lee Griffiths, and it's been confirmed by Neil Lennon that he's got a calf strain. We all know what happened during the week with social media images and social distancing, which we are all doing here in the studio. So do you think that Griffiths at this moment in time is on his way out of Celtic?
I mean, it's a worrying thought, especially for fans of Lee Griffiths, that it could be his time is now up. To be fair to Celtic, they've given Griffiths multiple chances, and it's just silly daft things like what came up through the week that really ruin what he can do, because on the park he's one of the few players that scored 100 goals for Celtic. So the fact that something like having a birthday party with more people than what you're technically allowed to be, if that's going to ruin a Celtic player's career, we've just got to be really careful. We don't want a repeat of what's happened up in Aberdeen. So Lee Griffiths, he's going to slip up now and again, but it's how he bounces back from it that's going to determine whether he's got a future at Celtic or not.
A few weeks ago I posed the question, is Klimala now the second choice striker? And some people disagreed with that. What you've then seen is the way that he's performed in the opener, what's happened with Lee Griffiths, and I think it's undoubted that he is. He's a second choice now, Kevin, isn't he?
When I commented that when I says Lee Griffiths was the second choice striker, this was before I'm not going to call it nonsense because we don't know what's actually happening here. So, but all you need to have a look at is what Neil Lennon in the press conference on Friday. He was even unconvinced with his own explanation why Lee Griffiths wasn't in the squad. If Kamala keeps on doing the business, which I hope he does, then Lee Griffiths has got a fight on his hands. If we're still interested in bringing in 2 centre forwards, which we might do, for me, I don't reckon that we would run with 5 centre forwards during the season. I think we would run with 4. So if we're looking to bring in 2, that means 2's leaving. Obviously, Bayo's already away to Toulouse, so it means 1 more is leaving.
You're very confident about Bayo being in Toulouse, but I don't know if you've seen the news that broke yesterday. Toulouse have actually got a COVID crisis of their own. Bayo can't confirm his signing yet. So Bayo is currently in France, but can't confirm his signing until they've come out of quarantine. So who knows?
It does look like Bayo's out the door, at least for 1 season on loan, whatever happens, whether Toulouse is the final destination or not. But I'm so frustrated with Lee Griffiths. I mean, I love Lee to bits, and his goal-scoring record when he's played consistently throughout his career has been up with the best. And we talk about whether or not he was the number 2 striker. I mean, he'd established himself in the team at the end of last season. Celtic were playing very, very well with 2 up front. Lee was absolutely back in the reckoning, scoring goals again, seemed happy, and then he does something daft like the incident through the week. He doesn't seem capable of seeing cause and effect. I mean, if news hadn't got out as to what had gone on and the sort of social gathering at Lee's house apparently, then, conceivably Lee picks up COVID from somebody, spreads it to the rest of the squad. Celtic can't fulfil a European fixture as a result. Champions League goes for a ball of chalk. I mean, the consequences potentially absolutely catastrophic. And Neil Lennon and Peter Lawwell must be absolutely seething behind the scenes.
At their wits' end.
Lennon was very strong about it on Friday when he says they've reiterated to the players it's training home, match. They're now back in a bubble.
Yeah.
He understands the frustration that especially their young men, they'll have wives, partners and that wanting to get out the house with the kids, but as you says, David, quite rightly, that they've got to watch because the ramifications of any sort of us having to cancel games is not worth thinking about, especially in this season.
It's good to see that Neil Lennon's Celtic have actually issued these clear instructions to the players, because one of the things that's not been clear to me during the discussions regarding this debacle up in Aberdeen is whether or not the Aberdeen squad by the club were given clear instructions to steer clear of pubs and clubs. I think if they had been, Aberdeen would have made that clear. The fact that Aberdeen haven't made that clear suggests to me that the players were at liberty to socialise in sensible groups if they wanted to do so.
Absolutely. And again, you've got to look at the insurance element as well, because, I mean, if, for example, that game is forfeited, David, and you're going to put your team under pressure. You mentioned the European fixtures there, and obviously we do know who our first European opponents are going to be. At that stage of the game, we tend to get to know a lot of these teams, don't we?
It seems to be the same teams that coming out the hat time and time again. Once again, we're facing KR Reykjavik. Last time we faced them, it was Cal McGregor's first game. Once he came back from his loan spell against Notts County. And you look at the opponents that we could have faced, it was the champions of Sweden, the champions of Iceland, and the champions of Northern Ireland or Albania. So we could have been facing Linfield again. We had June Gardens was the other option.
Yeah.
And a bit odds to try and announce the Albanian team. But yeah, it's the same teams, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, because when you look at the fact that we've played Rosenborg quite a few times, we seem to have their number now. I
know. I'm glad we didn't get Linfield for obvious reasons, but it would have been interesting going back to Albania, wouldn't it? Especially how the president loves the Celtic.
I don't know what the social distancing is over there, but I'm sure he'd have got into the ground.
How funny was it when he started retweeting Celtic greats pictures with Axom in the front of the jerseys, because Rudy Vatt had been playing in the game. Next thing you know, Axom's getting retweeted by the president of Albania.
Celtic
Fantastic.
Get into people's hearts in bizarre ways, but I think the Albanian president is one of the most bizarrest incidences I've ever seen of somebody falling in love with Celtic with no connection whatsoever apart from Rudy Vatt. Right, I know. I just think
he's a good connection, Rudy, isn't he?
I know, but
remember we seen him at Blairwood against Rangers. just recently in that game when Brian McLeod played. He takes it so seriously, even though it's just a bounce game. He will destroy you at half time if you're not trying or holding the line and everything else. The comments have started coming through, so please join us today. This is our live coverage. We're going to be here throughout the entire game and for half an hour afterwards. You don't have to wait for podcasts or videos to come out because we're doing it live. Gordon Wilson on YouTube. Is there anybody out there? That's what we're asking. If there is, then ask the questions. We'll run through them. What's your thoughts on the team today? What's your thoughts on Lee Griffiths? Does he still have a future at Celtic Park? So thanks very much, Gordon. Hail, hail, guys, and hail, hail back to yourself. Jason Christie, how are we today? Well, we're fine. We're just awaiting kick-off. We're looking at the opening fixture, and quite honestly, when you looked at that fixture there, correct me if I'm wrong, that was Greg Taylor's finest performance in the hoops.
Yep, definitely. He's certainly progressed far beyond what I think most Celtic fans would have expected him to do. So when he moved from Kilmarnock, he took his time to settle in, to get his space over Bolly, but it just shows you the ability that he's got. He's a Scotland under-21 international for a reason, and those balls are put on a plate last week for both Edouard and Frimpong to score, and he's certainly made that left-back position his own.
I feel sorry for him, It must be hard being Greg Taylor. You've got to follow Kieran Tierney. Kieran Tierney, one of the greatest fullbacks Celtic have produced since Danny McGrain. So you've got a lot to live up to, and sometimes think our own expectations are a bit high of the guys that are coming in, and we've got to give them time to bed in. He's got great experience. He's played over 100 games for Kilmarnock in the league that we play in, so you've got to give him the time to bed in. And for me, he is a far better option than Bolingoli. I see a leader on him. I'd
agree with that, Kevin. And the attacking play from both fullbacks, in fact, last Sunday was a real feature of a Celtic's game, with Frimpong bombing down the left and bombing down the right, and Taylor down the left. And Taylor really impressed in an attacking sense last weekend. As you say, Colin, just those crosses were absolutely laid on a plate for the front men. I think some questions still need to be addressed in a defensive sense by Greg Taylor, and there'll be sterner tests ahead this season than Hamilton. But I agree, his best game in a Celtic shirt to date, no doubt about that.
Keep the comments coming in and the questions. We're here all day. And Jason Christie, what's happening with Encham? It's a good question. Colin, for me, he's one of our finest talents in midfield. How can he not get a game?
I think we explained this through the week. He's a Rolls Royce midfielder. What was it? You were a Vauxhall Nova midfielder? Something like that.
I play left back, so that's fair enough.
No, but I'm disappointed he's not involved in some way in the starting 11 today. I think this should always be a place for him in the side. He's got a range of passing, which is it offers a different option. It can get the ball wide out to the full-backs, David, as you were just saying. They love to bomb forward, and Cham can kind of hold the ball there for them to break forward. We're looking at Brown and McGregor in the middle of the park, with Christie kind of sitting just in front of that. He can play both roles, so he is a valuable asset to the squad, but I think it'll be disappointing not to be starting. He's probably better than some of the options that we've got in front of him.
See, we've spoken about it throughout the season, Kevin, with Encham. For me, you've got to make a space for him. So how would you reshape that side to get him in there?
I think it's very difficult to reshape the side because you've got Ryan Christie there, you've got Callum McGregor there. Unless you go to a 3-5-2, then there's no unnatural place for him. A day like today, Kilmarnock have probably narrowed the pitch like they usually do against us. So it could be a case if we're struggling to break them down into the second half, a wee change of formation and you bring Cham on. And as you say, he's got that ability to pass through defences. He's got a laser-like vision. I think he's a cracking player, but I really do understand why he's known the first 11.
I think he's arguably the most gifted player on Celtic's books, Kevin. In terms of just natural talent, and he'd kind of established himself in the side towards the end of last season, playing in that 3-5-2 setup. He had a kind of free rein in midfield, and was able to spray the passes about. And I'm sure he'll be disappointed not to be in the team at the moment. That's an understatement. Obviously had the They had the wee episode last season where he gave an interview to L'Equipe saying that he thought his development would be best served by playing outside of Scotland. He seems to be over that. Lenny kind of had a heart-to-heart with him. All is forgiven. But I think in Cham, it's a long transfer window this season till something like the 5th of October. And I think Incham is one of 2 or 3 players. There's a real question mark over whether or not he'll still be here at the end of that transfer window. I hope he is. I think he's a tremendous player, and I think there's absolutely a role for him as we gun for 10 this year.
Oh, definitely. Jason Christie, thanks for your comment. Griffiths needs to get his act together. I think it's disappointing. It is disappointing, but Celtic's state of mind certainly doesn't want to stick the boot into Lee Griffiths because, as you were saying, David, when he is on form, there's no one finer in terms of goal scoring in Scottish football. There was a stat that came up obviously on the footage today looking at how long it took for each of the players to score 50 goals for Celtic. 62 games for Lee Griffiths. And then you're looking at Edouard, he's hopefully going to get his 50th today. But, I mean, where does it go? If he leaves Celtic, where does Lee Griffiths go?
I think the only way is down for Lee Griffiths if he leaves Celtic. I'm not sure where he does go from here. I'd like to think he will be given another chance. I think he will be given another chance. If 2 strikers go out the door this transfer window, and Bayo's one, my gut feel is that Lee Griffiths won't be the other. I hope he isn't. But it's a cliche, but there cannot be many last chances left for Lee Griffiths. So I was, to be honest, I was spitting feathers. And I think it's reasonable to expect a higher standard from highly paid football players than other general members of society. They can and they should be held to a higher standard. They're getting paid very well for what they do. Some sacrifices are entailed in doing that, and Lee needs to screw the nut and realise that. He really does.
Toe the line, absolutely. Tony Flanagan, hail to you as well. Tony, you can comment, get involved. This is going to happen all season. A Celtic State of Mind will cover every game from 30 minutes before kick-off until 30 minutes afterwards. And you can comment on YouTube, Twitter, via Periscope, and also Facebook. And whatever you throw in, we will discuss it. But keep it clean, please, ladies and gents. B-Boy 7, welcome back. Unfortunately, I think Griffith's Celtic career is all but over, barring any major injuries. Now, he has come back when he had been written off big time before. I don't think we're as far down the line this time in terms of where Lee Griffiths is. However, Neil Lennon must be at the end of his tether. Kevin stated there that he was spitting feathers as he was explaining. But the point was made the other day, he didn't have a dig at Griffiths, did he? And now he has done that previously. So I think he's maybe keeping it in-house. I would love to think, David, that there's a way back for him because when he's on fire, I mean, the guy can score you 40 goals a season, as he's proved previously. Whether or not, if another big-name striker comes in, Ajeti rather, from West Ham, if he comes in and he plays well, you're out the picture.
No, definitely. I think what David said. There's not many last chances left for Lee Griffiths. It's not as if he's a young boy. He's fully a grown man. And Lennon, he loves to throw an arm round a player and try and get the best out of him. But eventually there will be a time where we have to cut our losses with him. And you say, where's the next place for him? I would have said it would have been back to Hibs. But with the way that Kevin Nisbet started the season there, I don't know if there's a space for him.
There's got to be a tolerance level in the dressing room. The managers has got to have a tolerance level with him, and there'll be players in the dressing room who are influential in the dressing room will also have a tolerance level. And if they're saying we can't give him another chance, then the management have got to listen to that as well.
You know, when you're talking about where does he go next, I tell you what I wouldn't be doing. I wouldn't be giving Hibs anybody. Because they've started really well, and we have spoken really highly of Jack Ross previously. But I think he's been very shrewd with his transfer dealings, and I think Hibs are going to be the third kind of force this year. What do you reckon?
I'd agree. Yeah, I mean they've started the season on fire so far. Very impressive first half at any rate against Kilmarnock last weekend. Blew Livingston away yesterday. Some astute signings, Kevin Nisbet in particular, and Jack Ross. I think he's. I think very, very astute appointment by Leanne Dempster and the Hibs board bringing him in when they did.
Absolutely. Facebook user is giving us the hail, so hail back to you. Please stay with us throughout, and we will share your comments and discuss any points that you raise during today's match against Kilmarnock. Craig Charlie Harrison, I hope Griff stays and gets back on the pitch. Silly mistake, might cost him dearly. This is the thing, there is a lot of sympathy for Lee Griffiths from the Celtic support, isn't there? Remember when he was coming back into the side, every time he ran around that pitch and the whole stadium, stood up for him. So I'm the same, I'd love to see him back, but I'm starting to doubt it.
Do you know that's the thing? How many chances do you give Lee Griffiths? Do you know what I mean? The fans have obviously got that natural connection to him, and it's down to the fact that he gave us all during the times when others kind of threw the boots into the crowd. He was the main kind of goal scorer, scoring 40 goals. There was a clamour for him still to be the number one, even when Dembele was there. Now it's Edouard. A lot of people have got a nostalgia thing for Lee Griffiths. But when you look at the way that the likes of Bayo and other strikers of that ilk have come through, they never got a chance because Lee Griffiths was put back into the squad as soon as he was ready to go. So we've given Griffiths lots of chances. I agree, on his day, fantastic striker, knows where the back of the net is, but if we can't go into this season, the most important season we've had in a long time, with players that we just can't rely upon.
He's like a black sheep of the family, eh? Everybody wants to disown him at times, but then comes to a family wedding, family gathering, and he's up there singing the songs, and he's everybody's pal until he goes out and steals a car.
As long as he doesn't sing his songs. As long as he doesn't sing his songs, he's getting in trouble for before.
He's also a football fan. He's also one of us, and he understands what we go through on a weekly basis, and we've got that connection. And well, no, me and him personally, obviously, that would be a bit weird. But there is a connection between the Celtic support and Lee Griffiths. Saying there's a connection between the Hibs support and Lee Griffiths as well.
Of course there is, and that's what makes it all the more frustrating, because Lee's pushing an open door. It's not as if anybody's trying to keep him out the first team. We'd all like to see Lee back. Neil Lennon would like to see Lee back, and he's proven time and time again that if he's given a consistent run in any side, he's a goal every other game man minimum. Right throughout his career, he's done that. I think he'll come back. I think he'll come back at Celtic. It's been interesting that none of the players have spoken out against him. Neil Lennon said his piece when Lee returned unfit from training, but then welcomed him back into the fold. Made a point of saying how well Lee had been training after being left behind when the rest of the team went to France for the pre-season matches. And I think he'll live to fight another day after the midweek Insta indiscretion.
Well, here's hoping, particularly now that Colin has made all our days by saying Bio's coming back, so I would much rather it was Lee Griffiths. Jason Christie, thanks for your comment. McGregor is a new Bruni, great player, different player though, isn't he? Different player than Scott Brown. I mean, he's got the leadership quality, but, we were talking about this earlier, and it probably goes back to the Encham points as well. Scott Brown can't play 50 games this season, No. So do we have that succession planning in place? Who's going to replace Scott Brown, or do we change the way we play?
It depends if we go like for like, as you say, or do we actually change the way that we play. I think it was Brendan Rodgers' last 6 months when Brown got injured against Hibs at Celtic Park, and we went with the midfield trio of McGregor, Rodic and Christie, and we played our best football of that last period of Brendan Rodgers' reign. So we can change the way that we play, but I do think that sometimes we do need that defensive midfielder. And maybe Sorrow's the man. Maybe we have got the succession planning in place. Somebody that can cover the ground well.
I've been quite impressed with Sorrow, what I've seen of him so far. But as you say, Calmack's a different player from Scott Brown. So in terms of leadership qualities, yes, I think he can replace Scott Brown. Light for light replacing him in field, no, he's a different sort of player at this stage of his career anyway. But I actually think Callum McGregor is probably the most indispensable player in the Celtic squad, just because he can do so much. He's so pivotal to so much of what the team does. I mean, we can talk about Odsonne Edouard going, Christopher Ajer going, Ollie and Cham going this transfer window. Clearly, we don't want to see any of them go, let alone all three. But the one guy we cannot afford to lose at any price is Callum McGregor.
Totally agree with you, David. Absolutely. Now, the comments are coming through. Thank you very much for that. Gordon Wilson, thank you again for getting involved. Gordon fancies 3-0 at Celtic. What's your thoughts, Colin? What's your prediction for today's game?
I agree with Gordon. I'll go with 3-0 for Celtic. I think if we can get the fullbacks going forward and pinning Kilmarnock back, it will be a case of seeing how many we can get. Looking at the Kilmarnock side, there's a couple of players that will probably give Julian and Ira a hard game if they get the ball forward, but I think they'll probably sit back, take as much pressure on as they can and try to hit us on the counter-attack. So I'm going to go with 3-0 and Forrest as the first goal scorer.
Kevin, what's your thoughts? What's your prediction for the game?
I want Celtic to play with energy. I want us to be expansive. I want us to be beautiful. I just want them to send me up the road with a smile on their face. Score goals. I reckon 4-2. Colin's already mentioned there. This Kilmarnock side actually hasn't changed much over the last couple of years. So we know what we're going to get from them. They're a solid, experienced Scottish Premiership side. Hamilton created a couple of chances against us last week. So I'm going for 4-2 Celtic with Mo scoring the first goal.
Kevin sees loads of goals. David, what's your prediction?
I'll be slightly more conservative, maybe 2-0 Celtic. Callum McGregor, man, we've just been talking about to net the first goal perhaps, but Rugby Park's such a difficult place to go to. I don't know, any sort of win would be entirely acceptable. When we beat them 3-1 back in the dark days of January, that's as comfortable an outing as we've had at Rugby Park for a number of years. So any sort of return trip with 3 points in the bag is good for me.
Well, everybody, thank you for joining us. We're going to work through all your comments throughout the game. If you've got any comments at all, just make them on our live stream and we'll discuss them here at A State of Mind Studios. So, Gordon Wilson, thanks for joining us again. Colette Prunty, hi. Hello back to you. Yeah, 3-0 to the Mighty Hoops, says Jason Christie. And personally, I think Celtic will win 1-0 today, because I just look at what happened last week, Kevin, and we need to tighten up. I think that when you look at the new goalkeeper coming in today, Bain's going to be disappointed with that. I mean, when you looked at the goal that he actually conceded, he was unlucky. There was a deflection there, but he's going to be very disappointed. But Barkas needs to get to know his two centre halves, and he's just in the door. And I don't think the two centre halves have gelled as well as I'd like anyway. So we need to tighten it up. And because of that, I feel that it's going to be a bit of a stuffy game today. You've got the surface and everything else that we've discussed. Who's going to score the goal? Well, I was going to say Encham, but he's on the bench. If he scores it, it means we're in for a tense afternoon, unfortunately, gents.
Thanks for that, Paul.
So, all right, Gary Doonan, welcome via Facebook. It's great to hear from you. With that formation and in the 3-5-2, Encham will find it hard to start games. I'm disappointed, but I don't disagree with that. I would be disappointed not to see Encham, and I don't think we can sell him. I think the dispensable player that we've seen in or around the first team squad, David, unfortunately, is Tommy Rogic.
Yeah, I'd agree. And he's he hasn't faded out the picture completely, but I remember we were all when he signed his new contract a couple of summers ago. Everybody was absolutely ecstatic, and he was a man very much in demand at the time. A lot of interest in him from elsewhere, but he's been out of form for such a long time, Tom Rogic, and you know when he's on his game, his sort of skill and intricacy with what he can do with the ball, most impressive. But he's been out of form for a long time, and unless he can correct that, then I fear he will disappear out of the picture completely.
It's unfortunate, but how much is that channeling Love Street 86 with that new new kit?
So nice.
It is. It's a stunning. It's, you know, a lot of the time when you see the actual images, you know, the promo images, you've got to see it worn on the pitch to fully appreciate it. Mm-hmm. That is a beautiful kit. So hopefully we can do what we did at Love Street back in 1986 today.
5-0 would do very nicely, thank you very much.
River Clyde 2 reckons that Encham has to play before Christie. I think you would have a lot of arguments against that, because obviously Christie is a game changer as well. Mm-hmm. And he started off pretty well this season, you know, watching the friendly matches and then the opener against Hamilton. Is there any way we can accommodate both of them, would be my question.
When you look at it, when we tried to do it last season, we pushed Christie out to the left. And at the minute, it's a position that we are lacking covering. Mm-hmm. At the minute, your only option there is Moy. And if he was to have a poor game or if he was to get injured, then there's no one really on the bench that you would say is the natural replacement for him to come on. So then Christie moves out to the left and you put in Cham through the middle. It certainly worked for quite a period of time in the winter months last season. So it's a position he's played before. It would get Cham into the team. If that's the way it's got to be, then I'm sure there's an option for Lennon going forward.
It's an option, and that's the question that Gary Doonan actually poses to us. If you look at that team that's just been announced, who does Encham start ahead of? I mean, there is the option, as you say, of pushing Christie out left, but then, we were looking at Greg Taylor last week. He went out and played the best game of his Celtic career. I've mentioned El Yunusi as well. He's got it in him to be the best player on the pitch as well. So it's a good point. Encham, he's going to have to do something special or rely on an injury or a suspension to get into that side by the looks of it.
But that's the thing, we're going to play so many games this season. We're talking that before even January, we could be playing 40, 50 games depending on players going off to play for international teams. So rotation is going to be key for us this season. And I think Encham maybe appreciates that and realises he'll get his 25, 30 games, but they might not come right at the start of the season.
Well, we're almost at that point, Colin, where we're kicking off our second domestic game of the season against Kilmarnock. Edward is going to be kicking us off in just a moment or so, and I still can't get used to watching Celtic with no fans, and I know it did happen back in the day, behind closed doors back in the 80s. I mean, was that sort of game that you were following Celtic and you were going to the games around about that time, David?
I remember that game very well. Absolutely, against Atletico Madrid, and it was played from memory afternoon on a weekday with floodlights not called into action, and of course Celtic lost 2-1, having drawn 1-1 over in the old Vicente Calderon Stadium. I think he who shall forever remain nameless scored the goal in the away leg, and then 2-0 down against Atletico at Parkhead. I think Roy Aitken pulled a goal back for Celtic that day, but it was almost inevitable that they would go out playing behind closed doors, and it was a kind of knock-on effect from the Rapid Vienna fiasco the season before.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think, if memory serves, there was a fantastic chance for Murdo MacLeod at home as well, a bit of a sitter that he missed, which was unlike him because the Rhino, as he was known, scored some fantastic goals during that period. But yeah, it was something we weren't used to back then. We're certainly having to get used to it now. And you look at Celtic, hopefully we'll be able to pin Kilmarnock really high up the pitch. But again, like Hamilton last week, and as you would expect, 9-10 men behind the ball.
Yeah, definitely. It's the way for a lot of teams to play against. Celtic especially, looking to hit us on the counter as they're looking to do so here.
That's a poor bit of defending though, and it's so simple, but before you know it, we're on the back foot, and thankfully it didn't come to anything.
If we break quick enough here, we can actually get them out, because they threw a lot of men forward. And we've lost the ball again. So
they really have come out the traps, and hopefully things will settle down a wee bit over the next few minutes, because it's all a bit exciting.
Miles an hour already, isn't it?
It certainly is. Keep the comments coming in. Stephen Healy, you're listening from Sydney. It's brilliant to hear from a Celtic State of Mind listeners in our audience from all over the world, and I do keep an eye on the charts, and it's quite astonishing that we're in the top 20 regularly in 17 different countries worldwide. The one that really amuses me and bemuses me in equal measure is Vietnam. We've been number 1 in Vietnam.
Good morning, Vietnam.
Exactly. River Clyde, 3 at the back, play Encham. It's an option, but when you're looking at what the fullbacks gave us last week, David, I mean, I would be at the moment, and it's a game-by-game basis. You might want to play. I was surprised we didn't play 3 at the back at home against Hamilton last week.
Sooner or later, I mean, injuries are a fact of life. It's a question of when, not if, with injuries. So sooner or later, Ollie and Cham will get a run in the team. But I think trying to shoehorn him into the side at the moment is that there's no obvious man to drop or change of shape that demands his inclusion. So he'll get a run before too long, I'm sure.
I think you're absolutely right there. I was just smiling because Neil Lennon was obviously giving himself a wee, what do you call it, the wee tea bags? The snooze. And it came from Mjällby and Larson, didn't it? That's where you got the habit. So what is it, just a wee tea bag of nicotine?
I think it's like a kind of chewing tobacco type thing. Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be very good for you, is it? Craig Charlie Harrison, thanks for your comment on Facebook. He's prone to too many slack passes, but in his day, he's one of the team's best players, not consistent enough for me.
Yeah,
I'd agree with that. I think that's indisputable. But he did come on to a real good game towards the end of last season, playing in that 3-5-2 formation in Cham, and it's a shame he's not been able to build upon that. And by the way, Paul, I mean, the games when he has played, the pre-season games, he sort of effectively captained Neil Lennon's B team. He's absolutely bossed it, and no problem with attitude, and he's spraying passes about, look really, really good. So the form's still there. It's just a question of finding a way for him into the team.
Oh, definitely, David. And another comment coming in from Facebook. For whatever reason, Griffiths doesn't seem to grasp the term professionalism. He's not a teenager, but appears to have the mentality of one at times. This is Celtic he's playing for, not an amateur club. I think the big thing, the nail's been hit in the head by yourself, David, when you're talking about the repercussions of a player doing that. Yes, it was foolish to do it, but it's the repercussions you're talking about, spreading that throughout the squad and throughout the staff.
And the implications of that.
And the implications. I mean, that's something
that will never have, that sort of thing would never occur to Lee in a month of Sundays, I'm afraid. Do you know, I fear for Lee if and when he leaves Celtic, because as I said earlier, I think the only way is down. He's the sort of guy, the minute his career's over, what's he going to do? How's he going to end up? He needs to keep playing as long as he possibly can, at as high a level as he possibly can, and that means staying at Celtic.
Do you know, for me, I wonder if there's a connection there. When you look at some of the players that came through and played for Hibs as well, you look at Gary O'Connor, Derek Riordan, and now kind of Lee Griffiths is almost dangerously verging into that kind of territory where they had it all quite young, and when it gets to a certain point in their career, it just goes all downhill, and sometimes they end up playing for Morton to see out their careers.
Yeah, no disrespect to Morton. The other one was, we kind of watched Jason Cummins going through a bit of a spell where you thought he was going the same way.
Exactly.
I know he had the highlights of last season, but he was a guy who, you know, he was the next bright thing when you seen him breaking through. So, yeah, there's definitely a trend, but I don't think it's just at Hibs. I just think it's a modern football situation, Colin, where they do, and we've had a couple of ex-players on the podcast recently, and they've told you about the transition of being this kid who's making 100 or a couple of £100 a week to getting your big contract, making your debut, and having disposable income and loads of time. And unfortunately, Joe Hamill, who came on, ex-Hearts and Leicester player, spoke about his battles with addiction, and he's not alone. It's a terrible, terrible situation within the modern game. I know that the players back in the 50s and the 60s enjoyed a punt. You know, they did, be it legal or not, in some occasions. But now it's one of these things where it's too much too young sometimes, Colin. And you've got to look at the education of young players as well in relation to the pitfalls of getting into that, getting into the gambling side of things. So I do have some concerns for Lee, and I just want to see him back in the side and doing what he does best for Celtic. Good afternoon, boys. That comes in from Ken Walsh. Ken is a long-time fan of Celtic State of Mind. He's commenting on YouTube. Thanks again, Ken. Hopefully you enjoy the game and we get the result we're looking for. How do you think it's going to pan out? Let us know. River Clyde 2, why is Bain dropped? Did nothing wrong last week. Colin, what's your thoughts? I know you're a fan.
I'm a fan of Scott Bain, but when you spend that sort of money that you're spending for Vasilis Barkas, then he is Lennon's first choice. And I understand the theory of if nothing's broke, then you don't need to fix it. But I think Bain was always a stopgap until we got that number one in. Lennon made no secret of the fact that he was looking for a new number one. We thought it was going to be Forster for a while. I'm not too disappointed with Barkas. I think he's got a great international pedigree. As we said about in Cham as well, there's going to be times in the season where Bain is going to need to step up. He is going to need to play. For example, we're playing St Mirren through the week, 2 games in 3 days roughly. There's going to be a lot of rotation in the squad, and I think Bain will certainly get his minutes, and he'll just need to be ready when the manager shouts on him, basically. The
good thing is, you're talking earlier on about the amount of strikers that we need. I think we're actually pretty well covered in most areas of the pitch, but I do have concerns, Colin, at centre half, and I have concerns out wide, right and left.
Yep.
And I think that, Neil Lennon has confirmed that he's still looking for a centre half to come in, and I keep banging on about Filip Benkovic. I mean, he was a player for me that you would walk back into that squad without any issue. He's played up here. I mean, people then counter that by saying, but he was injury prone, and we've just got rid of Simunovic, who had the same kind of issues. I mean, who else really is in the frame? I know that you've mentioned a few names previously, but I'd be happy with Benkovic.
I'd be over the moon with Benkovic. I think he's a wasted talent at Leicester. They had him playing in the Premier League 2, which is like their under-23s league, and then he went on loan to Bristol for the second half of the season, got 10 appearances, seemed to kind of quash the injury issues that people thought he might have. They spent a lot of money on him, and he doesn't look as if he's going to get anywhere near the first team. So if they're looking to recoup their losses, then I would ask Mr. Lowell to get the chequebook out
and deal with Brendan. Right, Kevin, how do you think the first few minutes have started for Celtic? You been impressed?
The game started off at a fair pace. It's sort of settled down now, and I'll probably say Kilmarnock are slightly edging it in at the moment, with possession-wise, are camped in our half with a number of shies, and we seem to be struggling to hold the ball up. The left-hand side, again, we've been going down the left-hand side quite often. The three down there, McGregor, Taylor and El Nahousi. We've been going down there quite well, but we just seem to be finding our feet now after we made a energetic start. The game seems to have just settled into a scrappy rhythm.
Definitely picked up on what you said earlier. They look as if they have narrowed the park for this. They know what they're coming up against. They know Celtic like to get down the flanks and to get the crosses over. And it doesn't look as if there's a lot of gap between the edge of the 18-yard box and the touchline. So Celtic maybe need to try a different tactic here.
That's a poor tackle.
That's a booting, yeah.
It's a poor tackle by Dicker. Now, Matt Bradley just hammered a fortune in the slots in the arcade. Need cheering up today by my beloved Celtic. Great show again, guys. Well, we're going to be here all day. Mark, hopefully you didn't lose too much. Please, everybody, gamble responsibly. And we're going to be looking at a situation here where Celtic are dangerous at set piece. And hopefully we'll have an opportunity to open the scoring. I mean, it wasn't the kiss of death I gave Celtic by predicting 1-0. I just seen this being a stuffy game, with 9-10 men behind the ball at all times. Our two full-backs bombing down the wings, but they'll be taken out time and time again.
Kilmarnock have got that. In Alan Power and Gary Dicker, they've got two sort of bosses within the midfield where it's get by us, and if you get by us, we'll bring you down.
Yeah!
Oh, it's in.
That's in.
What a strike.
Christie with the first goal.
Right, I love the goal, but that celebration has to go. Now, Christie, that's why you don't drop the boy. Yeah. That's a phenomenal strike from that distance.
Just celebration.
I just want to check this. Is it a good strike or is it a goal? Oh, goalkeeper's got to do a lot better. That's terrible.
I'm quite happy with that.
Is that Danny Rogers in goal for
Danny
Kilmarnock?
Rogers.
That would be him.
I'm glad you were fully committed there, Kev. Me, I kind of just sat and thought, is it behind the goal? Is it in? Brilliant. Superb strike. And you would hope now, similarly to Hamilton, once that first goal goes in, you just kind of hope it opens up a wee bit.
Yeah, definitely.
I hope it settles them down a bit. Because
and there we go as well. Kilmarnock have maybe got to change their game plan earlier than what they expected. But then again, they might just sit in and just hope they didn't lose a quick second.
But then this is what we were saying, we've got to be careful that we don't overcommit, because we can get hit on the counter. This is what they've set up to do. But Kilmarnock have got to be careful as well that they don't give away too many fouls. Because if Ryan Christie can score from that area against Danny Rogers, then they'll all be lining up for a shot.
A comment in from Stuart Miller from YouTube. Thank you, Stuart. I think I predicted that we were good at set pieces there, before we go. Stuart Miller, hope you're all well, lads. Unfortunately, I think Griffith's Celtic career is all but over. Barring any major injuries, I just don't see Lennon giving him another chance. Well, I think Lennon does relent. He's going to be angry at the boy, but, it comes round. These things come round with Lennon, and they would bring him in. And saying that, remember the situation with Anthony Stokes at Hibs? That was it. Game over, and he was out the door. And Stokes has never recovered for that, has he?
No, he hasn't. No, ended up plying his trade in all sorts of weird and wonderful geographical locations. Anthony Stokes, and I just hope the same fate doesn't await Lee Griffiths. But I think he will get. I think he will get another chance. Goals, goals are his stock in trade, and he is a regular goal scorer. And I'm absolutely certain that
I'm as certain as I can be that Neil Lennon will give him another chance.
Yeah, there's another one you can add to that list, Anthony Stokes. Another one coming through young, making his name and then just sort of tailing off his career. So it's a shame that it's happening to so many of them.
So many of them, Colin.
If you look at a highlight reel of Anthony Stokes, he was a fantastic football player.
Unbelievable.
He had the ability. But again, going to Arsenal at 16, getting a big money move, just seemed to be the... No, remember when he was playing with Falkirk.
Yes. Scored a hat-trick against Dunfermline, I believe.
And he was meant to sign for Celtic and he ended up going to Sunderland. And I liked him as a player, but he was in the Griffiths mould.
Lennon never seemed to trust him, Kevin, against Rangers.
No.
Stokesy.
No.
He never seemed to trust them against Rangers. Comments coming through about our decor. Get some decor up, boys. Well, there is a reason for that, because we're in a custom built recording studio. We need to watch what's going up, but we do have some plans, and it won't all be grey behind us. But surely what you've got in view at the moment is good enough in the meantime. But hopefully we'll have some decor up there in the future. And if you want to be an official sponsor and have your logo up on the wall for Matchday, which is going out to several thousand on a weekly basis, then get in touch, DM me, and we can talk about some opportunities. Lawrence Connolly. Lawrence, who was able to tell us all about Che Guevara's Irish heritage last week.
I must apologise to Lawrence because it was Limerick. I says it was Cork.
Well.
But Lawrence did correct me.
Lawrence knows. Lawrence knows. Can we expect to see Dembele getting some game time today? Dembele is actually the player, and I'm all about youth, but he's the player on that bench that I probably wouldn't have on the bench, to be honest with you, because I think, I would much rather last week have had Lee Griffiths on the bench. Are we going to see an appearance by Dembele today, gents?
I wouldn't be surprised to see an appearance from him, especially if this game gets a bit more comfortable. I think Kilmarnock are a team that are quite rough, so they might target him with him being such a slight frame. But when the game starts to open up and there's pace and there's the opportunity for Dembele to run at the team, then Lennon may look to him to kind of stretch the defence there. You mentioned about taking him out the side. If you take him out the side, you're kind of taking maybe one of the only wide options we've got, and that is what we're saying. We're kind of struggling out wide at the minute, and I hope it's a position that we look to try and strengthen.
That's a terrible celebration.
Shape, by the way.
Stop it. Stop it, as much as I love you guys.
To be eliminated immediately.
Absolutely. Michael Quinn is asking, has anyone read Davy Proven's article? Now, correct me wrong, he writes for the tabloid Rag.
He does.
He writes, so unfortunately or fortunately I've not read it. But Michael, if you can let us know if there's any points in there you're unhappy with, I'll certainly not be clicking on the website to read it.
I saw something about it online today, but I can't actually recall off the top of my head what point David Proven was making, but perhaps he didn't either.
I'm thinking back to Love Street. This is the unfortunate thing, Colin. I'm thinking back to Love Street because of the beautiful kit we're wearing today, and that famous image of Davy Proven in the dugout giving it the 2-0.
The 2-0, yeah. Mm-hmm.
His legacy, and a lot of players' legacies are kind of tarnished by the punditry, isn't it?
I think some of them try too hard to appear to be objective or neutral, however you want to put it. But David Proven has he said one or two strange things during his time as a pundit, that's for sure. But he was fairly outspoken in his tabloid column today. So if you could remind us exactly what he was saying, then we can kick those ideas around.
Certainly.
I think we need to revisit Proven as a player. But you talk to players from that era, and they do say that it was one of the best wingers they've ever played with, one of the best players that they've ever played with. It's a shame, but guys like Proven, Charlie Nicholas and that, they have played a big part in Celtic's history. And we shouldn't just disregard them because they now have to make a living.
Yeah, and the thing is, you were looking at his two former clubs there today, and he was a record signing when we bought him. He'd had a cracking game against Celtic in the previous season, and we shelled out, and he was a fantastic winger. It was the first Celtic player I ever wrote to. A wee bit of fan mail asking for the signed photograph, which I've still got, by the way, Davey, if you're listening. River Clyde 2, you guys know how to mute Chris Boyd and Andy Walker. We've already done it, that's why we're on here. Mute the telly and watch and listen to us. It's a perfect combination. So thanks for your comment. Keep them coming in. And again, Kilmarnock obviously have looked at the performance last week, haven't they? And they know the danger down the flanks with our bombing fullbacks. And I think you just look at even that ball from Taylor. That's a fantastic ball, just to get Kelly on their back foot. And it's all Celtic at the moment. You just hope, though, that we can open that up a wee bit more, because I just think there's a mistake in the back there, David. Probably Big Ayer, a player who I'm very fond of and I've got a lot of time for. There's a mistake in that boy, isn't there?
There is, and that's always been one of the sort of repeated reservations about Christopher Ayer, and obviously some big name European clubs sniffing about him. Milan supposed to be interested. I even heard a suggestion that Real Madrid were interested back in the spring. So there's no question that offers have and will continue to come in for Chris Ayer, but he can be suspect at the back. I actually think I think he's a tremendous player. He reminds me a lot of Alan Hansen in his pomp. Just the way he's able to sort of take the ball forward, chip in with the odd goal, so elegant at the back, but he's error prone. There's no question about that.
But he does have better hair than Hansen, doesn't he?
Yeah, definitely.
Psycho Candy, I like the name, commenting via YouTube. Thoughts on the Encham Christie debate? For me, it has to be Christie. Provides more going forward with goals and assists. Well, it's one of these debates that's going to rumble on. And I think when you look at what Christie offered this morning, or this afternoon rather, there's no way you would drop him.
No, I understand why we want Cham on the side, but for me, this was what Neil Lennon sees as his strongest 11, and until we are forced to change it, then I expect to see this 11 starting the majority of the games.
Do you know what? It's actually a good issue to have, to an extent, that we've got that many good players that there's just no space in the 11 for them. It's not at the point where we're struggling to put a strong 11 together. We've got some players on the bench that would be looking to get game time and are good enough to get game time.
It's a perfect dilemma for a manager, eh? It really is. Just keep everybody happy.
This game today is one week. I can just imagine Cham struggling to make an impact. By the way, artificial surface, really congested in midfield, very little time on the ball, and I can see a player like Encham, who's as we've discussed, is a Rolls Royce at his best, just getting bypassed by the game. But I've absolutely no doubt that Encham will get opportunities as this season rolls around, and perhaps a chance to re-establish himself in the team like he did in the second half of last season until the dreaded COVID intervened.
I think we need to trademark that Encham is the Rolls Royce, because it's certainly getting put about quite a bit. It's going to be on t-shirts and pin badges all over the country. So.
Oh, don't. There's enough badges. There's enough badges kicking about. B-Boy 7, Kevin's point. We've got 250,000 listeners. We finally found somebody that agrees with you. Kevin's point about the dressing room is spot on. The line must be drawn somewhere, Kevin.
For an element of full disclosure, I sat next to Stuart at the football.
Move on.
But he's right, I'm right.
Francie Dub LU, for whatever reason, Griff doesn't seem to grasp the term professionalism. We have looked at the situation with Griffiths, and as I say, I don't want to get into the stage where a Celtic state of mind are sticking the boot in. I think we all really want to see the return of him, but time's running out. He's 29 now.
And we've drawn some comparisons with Lee Griffiths and other players, but one of the things to remember is that Lee's not done anything malicious. Never has. He's not that sort of a guy. I mean, that's why people do cut him some slack, and that's why people are prepared to give him second, third, fourth, and fifth chances, because he's a good egg. But he just doesn't seem to be able to make the link between cause and effect in his head, and importantly, he doesn't surround himself with people who can do that on his behalf either.
It must be so difficult for a manager like Lennon as well, though. Having had similar issues with Anthony Stokes, and we were there when it happened, weren't we? When Neil Lennon actually explained to us that he was extremely unhappy with Stokesy, and there was no coming back. And you see how his career has failed to develop since. And then before you know it, you're the wrong side of 30, and you're in the frame to sign for East Kilbride.
Right, the thing about that night, I remember that story at the Royal Concert Hall, and he didn't name Stokes, and somebody shouted it for somebody shouted Stokes for the crowd, and Lennon went, "Aye, Stokes it."
He confirmed it. He did confirm it.
Gave a penalty.
Well, it did look a bit dodgy. Julien's obviously brought him down there, but there you go. That's what you're up against. I mean, it's been Celtic from the get-go, and then something daft happens and we give away a penalty, and it is a penalty.
It's a penalty,
It's a guaranteed penalty.
But I mean, this is what I mentioned earlier. We've got to watch out for this risk. Kabamba is a big boy up there. He's going to put himself about. He's managed to control that ball really well with Brown and Julian around him. Silly penalty to give away, but first chance to see what Barkas is made of here.
Well, here's hoping, because when you look at the first 24, 25 minutes of the game, it's all been Celtic, and for them to pull it back after there was no need for Julian to bring him back like that, and he's right in front of the referee as well, and nobody appealed it, so here's hoping Barkas can pull something out the bag for us. Right, so it's all square. Time for Celtic to regroup after that, because it's been pretty positive since kick-off.
There was something I noticed though, just about a couple of minutes before this goal, when Forrest got the ball out wide there, he was looking to cut inside. With the pitch being as narrow as what it is, we can't really afford our wingers to try and come in. We've got to try and space the ball out. With Taylor and Elyounoussi, Frimpong and Forrest out there, if you can get them down to the wing, get the ball across, get some service into Edward, who hasn't really got going yet. He's not really had a lot of touches. Lennon looking pretty irate here, but there's still 65 minutes to go. I think we can start looking at getting forward, creating some chances of our own, and start putting them away. It's looking good for your prediction, Kevin. 1 each already. Goals galore.
By the way, that was an excellent penalty. I mean,
right in the corner.
Barkas almost got it.
Had it not been Barkas, would have saved it. Yeah.
It was an excellent, right on the side of the net. We start the game and need to regroup, as I say. I mean, what other scores were coming through from Ibrox? Anybody got the score from Ibrox?
3-0 the last time.
3-0. So it's important that we can dig this one out, But Psycho Candy, if it was anyone other than Griffiths, he would have been punted by now, 100%. I think I would go back to what you said though, David. There's been no malice. It's more daft boyness, a lot of the stuff, So I think there's a route back. There's definitely a route back. And
For yourself.
Aye, it has Broadfoot. I mean, that's typically Broadfoot though, isn't it? So what you want now is you want Celtic to capitalise on the possession that we've had, and hopefully we can get back in front before the half-time break.
Let's shoot again. Get it bouncing in front of the goalkeeper. See what way the turf takes it.
Tony Murphy, a man who I used to sit next to many, many years ago at Celtic Park. I love Lee, but he's had so many chances and still causes problems. This season, more than ever, we need players we can really rely upon for the full season. I'm not sure we can trust him not to balls it up again.
I think it's a fair comment, but I just think Lee's goals speak for themselves, and I do think that goals are the primary currency in football, and I think he's got another last chance left in him. I might be wrong, but that's my reading of the tea leaves at the moment, and I honestly hope I'm right.
I think you're right in what you're saying though, Paul. I think we have to be careful here that we don't let this get into a debate over his professionalism, especially when we're only 2 games into the season. We know he's made a mistake. The only way he'll ever be able to prove himself is when he gets back onto the park, and I'm sure we'll all be hoping that he puts a couple of goals in for us this season. So,
and let's not forget the 20 minutes or whatever it was he did play against Hibs. He looked like greased lightning.
He did.
Really impressive.
Particularly in good shape as well.
Yeah.
And, Jason Christie makes the point that Griffiths will always have a place in my heart as a Celtic great. He carried the hoops for a few seasons with his goals. He deserves another chance. You remember when there was the issues with the so-called senior players revolting? I don't know if it was as strong as that when Ronnie Dyle was in charge. Lee Griffiths probably could have been in that category, but you never ever heard him being involved in that side of things. And he played some of his best football under Ronnie Dyle.
So we're just watching this here. That ball was actually out before the penalty. There should have been a throw-in for Celtic. The ball bounces out and it's over the line for a throw-in. That's not like Celtic to go without controversy.
When I look at that, fair play, if it was out, but when I look at what Julian's done there, where's the boy really going? He is heading for the goal, but where's he going? Because you've got a goalkeeper there that he's going to run into. So it was a really foolish
It was a clumsy
thing for him to do.
challenge right in front of the referee as well.
It's almost as if his concentrations went, because he was the one that claimed for the ball being out. It's almost as if he's lost that moment of concentration, and He's been rash, really rash, and he's been really stupid because we were completely controlling this game, and now it's went back to this sort of scrappy.
Stuffy.
I mean, this is a tough away game. It is a tough away game, and to go 1-0 up and to be controlling it the way that we were controlling it for a dreadful individual error like that, no wonder I'm feeling.
Do you know the thing is though, we've changed the style. We're trying to play it over the top into Edward, and it's not getting us anywhere. We're still missing the player in the middle of the park that can break open the defence, and in Cham or Rogic. Because we're just kind of playing this ball over the top here to Eddie and hoping he can bring it down off him.
Exactly, the number of balls that Eddie seems to be asked to control that are coming down with ice on them from a great altitude is phenomenal. It's not a great watch, is it, when we're reduced to playing like that?
That's maybe more to do with the way Kilmarnock's midfield set up. They like a wee sly kick and they like to try and break up the game. So if you try and stop them doing that, the only way to do it is the longer tight ball. And look at that bounce.
You've done well. Thank you again, Psycho Candy. You remember seeing a stat which said that Griffiths grabbed more goals after the winter break than the entire Rangers attack combined. I'm not sure of that stat personally, but I do like a stat, so keep them coming in. Keep your comments coming in. Psycho Candy was commenting via YouTube, and we've got another one. Shirley McGregor is the replacement for Bruni. I guess that's what he's referring to. Yeah. But I think you're right, David. He's a replacement in terms of that influential figure who could actually captain the side. I think he's built to captain the side.
100%. He's been in and around the first team for an awfully long time now, Callum McGregor. We've spoken about his importance to the team all round in terms of what he brings, and he seems to have a pretty level head on his shoulders as well. Head not easily turned. And absolutely, I think he's been earmarked by the Celtic Brains Trust as a future leadership material, no doubt about it.
I'd say with McGregor though, I still think he's far better going forward than he is defensive minded. I see him more as a Paul Lambert type than a Neil Lennon type. Someone that can still go forward, can still get here goals, and I think he's got the best left foot in Scotland. If he gets the ball on the edge of the area, then with a bit of space, he'll certainly put one past the goalkeeper. So. I wouldn't want him to drop too deep. I still think he's got an option for us going forward. Whereas in Cham might be the one to just kind of sit there and spray the balls about.
That's a better ball out wide, and I think Frimpong's done well there. Unfortunately, it's gone out.
Line,
But that's a better ball though, David. It's like going back to what you were saying there. Let's get it out wide and use the channels effectively. Psycho Candy states that he thinks Scott Brown will become a player coach and take a step back next season. Pretty sure he has some of his badges as well. I think he's built to move into that kind of position at Celtic Park, isn't he?
Yeah,
it's an open secret that's almost certainly what will happen, and he's got aspirations in that regard.
We're back into the old boot room mentality, David, where it's promoting guys from within.
Aye, there was an interesting debate last week about that, and if I'd been able to work out how to utilise YouTube properly, I'd have made the point. Talking about the Bayern Munich, consistently bring through players from within to fulfil not just boot room roles but key roles within the club.
Yeah.
Karl-Heinz Rummenigge's the chief exec. He's about to be replaced as chief exec by Oli Kahn. There are other Bayern players in and around the backroom staff. Hansi Flick, the current manager, is ex Bayern player as well. So they definitely look to promote from within. And I don't think anybody would suggest that Lee Griffiths is the next Celtic CEO, but there's certainly something to be said for promoting a boot room mentality, and Scott Brown would be an excellent starting point in that regard.
You see that as well. Juventus have just appointed Andrea Pirlo as manager. He was first announced, I think it was last week, as under 21s manager, and now he's the first team manager. So I think quite a few teams are going through that route. But it's about keeping a club's identity, and the players that have been there the longest know what the club means to the fans, to the players. So having that built into your backroom staff isn't a bad idea at all.
Where did he end up? His playing career? Was it New York?
I think he did.
Go to New York for a bit.
City, yeah.
Would you not have just loved to have seen him in the hoops for a season? Was he not just made to play for Celtic? Oh, that would have been dreamlike. What a match made in heaven. Pirlo. What other players would you love to have seen that might have happened? We've spoken about this a few times. I keep going back to Paul McGrath. Paul McGrath would have been a fantastic Celtic player, centre half, and we had a couple of opportunities to sign him. Now Celtic are defending, and it looks as though we're defending against the wind, and it's important that we just keep our composure here. We've got to keep our composure. We were talking about there's a mistake in the central defensive, and that's exactly what's happened. It's a mistake that's given away that. And fair enough, Colin, maybe the ball was out, but what a stupid bit of defending that was.
Oh, definitely, but yeah, we have kind of came to accept this from the Celtic defensive too, and as you say, maybe the partnership isn't quite what we think is there. There's an interesting part there. We've got Ryan Christie kind of moved out on the right, on the wing, kind of winning a corner here. I think Christie's a more versatile player that can play on either side of the flanks, and I've not really seen a lot from James Forrest today, or Ellie Hennessy out wide, and when you're looking to replace him, there's kind of no options there. Going back to what you're saying about at the back, almost. I think we do need to start making that the next priority. If Ajeti is definitely going to be the one that's coming in, then the next move has to be in the centre back position. If you're Ayer or if you're Julian at the minute, you can get away with playing a bad game because who's coming in to replace you?
This goes back again to one of the points David mentioned about the effects of the Lee Griffiths situation, is that Neil Lennon's probably looking at the fact that he's only got 2 strikers he can rely upon, whereas actually he should be looking at 3. Yeah. And if that was the case, he might not even be looking elsewhere for another striker, and then he can focus on bringing in the centre half.
All sorts of knock-on effects across the club, and available budget for a centre half if we need to shell out big money on an additional striker or 2. I just hope that as regards the centre-half position, if we're not going to go down a sort of tried and tested Filip Benkovic route, that we don't take another, 1 or 2 million punt on somebody that, we've never heard of. I'd far rather, paying whatever it was, 6 or 7 million for Christopher Julian, goodbye.
Yes.
And the guy in known quantity had a track record of a good play in the French Liga with Toulouse, and I'd far rather we paid that bit extra to get somebody like that than another 2 or 3 million punt on somebody who doesn't amount to anything, because that kind of money just adds up eventually.
Yeah.
And you've got all these sort of bodies lying around Celtic Park players, bit part players who are rarely used. It's not good.
A lot of money has been
wasted.
wasted.
The thing about Julian as well is he's 28 now. What you saw today, he's going to do. He's not going to improve as a centre back. No. We've got a finished article there.
Absolutely.
And his faults are going to go well.
We're just lining up another free kick, and hopefully we can pull this back to go in at the break ahead. That wasn't far away.
I tell you what, you're spot on, by the way, Kevin, about the pitch. You can actually see it. The lines, they've pulled the pitch in and they've narrowed the pitch as well. You can see where the lines were from the previous game. Things like that. It's an interesting. It's always a tactic that they can utilise, but it just that doesn't sit right with me that you can change it depending on who you're playing. I remember the first team that actually did that, and it backfired on them eventually. So
they used to do it at Ibrox, and obviously you've got the Tynecastle situation with the grass as well. They'll do anything to get a tiny advantage, Colin, and obviously at the moment, it's working for them because Celtic are not ahead. Gary Doonan, Celtic's captains, have all been different in years. McNeil different to Dalglish, and Dalglish different from McGrain, etc. in terms of position and styles of football. Absolutely, and I think Brown. There were people who didn't think he was built to be a Celtic captain when he was given the armband, but he's proven without doubt that he's one of the greatest captains we've ever had. As a young player, and I go back to also McGregor. McGregor was a different type of player when Dyler gave him his debut to the one we see now, Colin, And I think the development of Brown is quite astonishing. People are waiting for him to step back and not play as much. Does he look any less fit than he did a couple of years ago? How many years can we get out of Scott Brown?
I think if you're going to not have him play 50, 60 games a season, you could probably get another 2 or 3 years out of him. But if we're going to put him and play him every single game, then this, for me, could probably be his last season. Because I don't see how you can get to the stage of being 36, 37 years old and being relied upon to play Wednesday, Saturday for 8 months of the season. I think it's a lot to take.
You just feel there's a bit of a watershed coming at the end of this season, whether Celtic achieve the 10 or not. If they do, then box ticked, big celebration. If they don't, then a steward's inquiry will follow. But either way, I think it's probably a little bit of a watershed moment for this team, and some sort of personnel issues will in terms of the playing staff will come to the boil next summer, and Scott Brown's role going forward for the team will be one of the things that's I think comes under scrutiny at that point in time.
Did you get the opportunity to listen to any of the podcasts, David, in relation to our move to buy Wimbledon back in 1998?
I haven't listened to the podcast yet. No, need to catch up with it.
It was astonishing.
I remember the story.
Well, I remembered very little about that story. But the fact was Celtic were trying to get that route in English football. And that begs the question, you're talking there about the very personal achievement of winning 10 in a row. Once that happens, watershed moment, absolutely. But I think on a bigger scale, it is a watershed moment, because Celtic then need to ask, what happens next? Where do we go from here?
Where do we go from here? Well, that's why, I know everybody's obsessed with 10 in a row, but that's why it's important from a Celtic point of view, in terms of the way the club is run, in terms of the way the team is run, that not everything is put in the 10 in a row basket. I know it's very important, but there will be life after 10 in a row, whether 10 in a row is achieved or not. And it's really important that Celtic, capitalise upon the progress made in Europe last season, and establish themselves as a regular last 16 team in the Europa League, if not the Champions League, regular qualifier for the Champions League group stages, that kind of thing. Because if the extent of our ambitions is winning 10 in a row, then as you say, once that's achieved, where do we go from there? It's not obvious.
That's a worry for me, and I've commented on it a couple of times in the live bulletin, and I still think we should be looking longer term and throwing all our short term eggs in the 10 basket, for me, is wrong.
Yeah, agreed.
And I've heard Jim and Paul talking about the youngsters maybe not getting a chance this season. We need to give the youngsters a chance. I want to see the youngsters getting a chance at Celtic. I want to see Dembele and Welsh. We're talking about centre halves. Welsh has done okay when he's came in, but we're never going to know if he's got the capabilities of playing 50, 60 games a season for Celtic unless he gets game time. And
here we go again.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Here we go again. And that's a terrible bit of defending. Absolutely ridiculous bit of defending. And you've got to question the big fella, because he struggled against Livingston on a plastic pitch. And it's one of these things, we've just got to get on with that. The plastic pitches are there.
Similarly combative centre forward in Dykes.
Exactly.
There you go. We're now looking, obviously, if Jozo Simunovic had stayed, he probably wouldn't have started this game, but the way that Chris Julian's played so far, at half time we'd have been looking to try and make a replacement for him. I know we've got El Hamid on the bench, but I think we've kind of made the mistake of letting Jozo go before we had his replacement in.
The big thing with Julian, talking about the games that David references there, the most worrying aspect of that, because everybody has a bad game, or everybody has an opponent that gets the better of him. He just seemed to, he wasn't tuned into it, was he? He lost his discipline. And you're looking at him here, you're just hoping that, they've obviously looked at these games, David, and Dyer knows that the big centre forward going toe to toe with Julian on this plastic pitch isn't going to suit the big fella. So, hopefully that isn't a signal of things to come in the rest of this game, because I'm a bit concerned at that.
I think he was more done with the bounce of the ball there.
That is when the ball bounces. When the ball bounces, if Julian wins the ball in the air, it's fine, but if he lets the ball bounce, he starts to play himself into trouble.
Absolutely.
It is odd the way he's troubled by. Kabamba.
And Dykes.
Kabamba was playing National League football in England last season. Level 5, tier 5 in England. And he's troubling Julian here.
I know that is a concern. But hopefully, hopefully he can overcome that. Now, the comments are still coming through thick and fast. Keep them coming via Facebook, Twitter and YouTube. And from Facebook, hi guys, how do you feel about the Champions League? Well, I think we would have preferred to go to Albania. I think that was the general consensus. Linfield was well avoided, but we would rather have gone to Albania and had a wee party with Rudy Vata and all his friends through there. Mo L first goal and a 2-0 win, Francie W. Well, unfortunately, we're not going to see that. Would take a win today by any score and any means. Killie are more than used to playing in front of empty stands. We are not. That's Mark Bradley. Thanks very much. And at the moment, I would take a 2-1. And I did say it was going to be tight, but I didn't expect us to be going in at half-time at 1-1.
No, definitely. And we don't really deserve to be going in 1-1. I think we've kind of dominated the game. But we just haven't created enough chances. Danny Rogers makes a complete fool of the goal. He really should have reacted better to it, but we've not really gave him a save to make since then. So
yes, you're right. Now the comments keep coming in. B-boy, any win on that terrible plastic park, you take it. Well, at this moment in time, sitting here, I totally agree.
I'll tell you what, see the plastic park argument. We have a plastic park at Lennoxtown. We should have been training on that this week. So moving from a plastic park to a plastic park shouldn't really make a lot of difference. I think that's a mindset thing for players and something that we really have to go over. Because things like we go to Rugby Park, it becomes difficult. We go to Livingston Stadium, it becomes difficult. When we're training on that. So that kind of annoys me a bit that we use that as an excuse. We really should overcome that.
I do think the significance of the artificial pitches is overblown somewhat, and I mean in terms of clubs playing the way they absolutely have a role to play in football, certainly in the lower leagues. I mean, I think that the dimensions of the pitch are of much more significance today than the nature of it.
That was a good opportunity for Wee Forest. Jason Christie, Kevin, is picking up your prediction 4-2. Come on, our defence is better than that. Do you mean 4-0?
I think I've been proved right on my doubts about the defence, but I'm going to agree with David there. I think the dimensions of the pitch are far more a problem today than the actual artificial surface. When you can actually see, as Colin's pointed out, you can actually see where they've run the pitch in. But we've just got to get...
I don't have an issue with that.
I haven't got an issue with it either, but we should have known that's going to happen. That's happened for years when we went to Rugby Park.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
You've got to adapt. And I mean, if we're being fair and objective about this, Kilmarnock have enough disadvantages to cope with, and there's no reason why they shouldn't eke every single advantage that they can out of playing at home. So I've got no problem with it either. But it does make life more difficult for Celtic. But that's the entire point. Yeah, they've looked at. I mean, look at the damage that was done by the two fullbacks last week, and they've obviously looked at that as well. So fair play to Dyer. They've got to take every margin they possibly can. David, Psycho Candy 3-1 to Celtic. Think Julian will grab a goal. Well, let's hope so. Yeah, your bet's still on, Psycho Candy. Your bet is still on. Ken Walsh, new away kit. Yes, I think it's one of the ones where I read a comment, and it wasn't. That's us at half time 1-1. I read a comment saying that in many ways Adidas have played it safe, and they probably have played it safe by reintroducing the Love Street 86 kit, giving us another cracker of a black kit, and just not making any of the daft mistakes that New Balance were making with the home kit. But they're three class kits, are they not?
That's all you ask for. That's all if you're playing it safe every year and they're as good as that, that's all you ask for. We don't need to stretch the boundaries of going to a pink kit or a grey and pink kit or introducing new colours to the Celtic.
The palette.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just go with what we've tried and tested. Celtic fans are delighted with how this has went this year. So if this is playing it safe, then play it safe for the next 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Kevin was at some kind of forum, Kevin, and I won't steal your thunder, about New Balance, and they were discussing certain colours that they were prepared to use because they would sell well, and one of them was blue as an away jersey for Celtic, and Kevin was at this meeting, and various people in the room didn't disagree.
Wow.
I've heard stories about the kits being selected going forward and the reasons of why they've used the colour, but what I do have to say on the sort of blue, one of the best kits that New Balance ever produced for Celtic was actually the goalkeeper kit last year, which was that sort of turquoisey colour. And you can see that's kind of been implemented in Adidas's choice this year when you look at the third kit with the black and the turquoise down the sides. So not blue, but...
Well, New Balance came up with a kind of sky blue away number for Liverpool, which surprised me. But Liverpool playing in blue is one thing, Celtic playing in blue is another thing.
It certainly is.
Another thing again. But
Another colour was maroon, and I was aghast.
There were-
There's room, while there was guys agreeing, going, "Oh, that would be nice." And one of them it was a Ajax top. It was with the
With a
panel,
big
the panel
central
down,
band,
and I'm going, "No, you can't." What actually came out of that forum or group was the pink one, and the pink was the best of a bad lot.
With a tenuous link to the ticket from Lisbon.
the ticket
and never worn in an actual match, I think I'm right.
No, they wore it.
Do they wear it?
And that was the one last season, the
It was
silver.
last year's, the grey and pink one.
Oh, the
wasn't
grey and
it?
pink, that was never worn. That
Just
was
when
never
I was
worn.
beginning to
The
like
pink-
it
the
as
pink
well.
The pink was worn, the grey and pink was never worn.
Never won. So the penalty spot, Kevin Tate, pitch doesn't look great. Hope it's not too dry. Well, yeah, there definitely is an issue with the bounce of the ball, as you said, Kevin. I sometimes forget about Rogic until someone mentions him. Well, my point that I made, thanks Francie for the comment. The point I made last week was, since Neil Lennon's come in, Rogic has not been a big part of his plans or his success. He must be looking at him as an empty jersey now.
Yeah, there is
What's
that
he
danger.
done?
I mean, when did Tom Rogic last have a really good,
I'm
90
thinking
minutes or even 70 minutes in Tom
Yeah.
Rogic's case for Celtic? It's been quite some time. He's been bypassed in a number of matches.
He played quite well against Livy, remember, away. And that was the one game that sticks out last season.
But the equaliser, didn't he? That
Yeah.
night, yeah.
Yeah, but as you say, 90 minutes, will we ever get a decent 90 minutes out of Big Tommy? And he's a fan's favourite, this is the thing.
Yeah.
But if we're looking at the average wage bill at Celtic in terms of a weekly wage and he's not playing, then it may well be time up for Tommy Rogic. Gordon Wilson, now that's a smashing away kit. What's your thoughts on the new stuff with Adidas? I think it's superb. It's the best set of kits we've had since the 125th anniversary year.
Adidas, as Colin rightly says, Adidas have played it safe. But I'm worried about, you seen the Arsenal kits for next season with that Gothic writing on the back of it. Adidas done really, really well with Arsenal kits on their first season. Plain, simple, very classic looking Arsenal. And this season they've seemed to have just went off the scale.
It's extraordinary the way they don't really seem to listen to feedback from the fans. I mean, just in terms of just simple classic designs of what supporters want, I think. And this sort of perpetual need that the sports manufacturers seem to feel to come up with avant-garde designs is just beyond me, because I don't know anyone that wants them.
I think what Adidas probably know about Arsenal though is they could put any kit out and the fans will buy it, because there's that sort of just, it's Arsenal, I've got to have it, whereas I think Celtic fans are a bit more astute where they go, I'm not going to buy a blue kit, I'm not going to buy this. It's the best sellers have always been something that can touch on the heartstrings of a Celtic memory before, and that's why the 86 revamped kit will probably be one of the best sellers we've ever had.
Oh, no doubt at all about that, Colin. Gary Doonan, look at the state of that carpet not being watered by the looks of it. It doesn't look the best. Liam still thinks that Celtic will win 3-1, and I hope you're right, Liam, because obviously we need to get out of the traps in the second half. Hello to you boys down under. Hail, hail from Gordon Wilson. So obviously we do have some Australian fans listening into the show. Keep them coming. Jerry Fitzgerald, let's have a great game, boys. Mark Bradley, pitch looks lovely. Kelly must have bought a Dyson. I mean, see, when you look at when you look at the comments coming in, but if you were to base it on the statistical element of it as well, David, and I think Alan Morrison spoke about that as well, a lot of people do put it down to the plastic pitch. But then again, if the clubs are used to the plastic pitches, does that disadvantage them when they're playing away?
You don't have to look at Livingston last year. Livingston's away record was absolutely honking. Their home record, there was only two teams bet them at home last season, and it was Rangers and Aberdeen. So I think there's got to be an element of advantage, But as we've said, I think it's a mindset. It's an easy
definitely.
excuse for players to, oh, it's a plastic pitch, I'm not used to playing on this. We shouldn't be playing on this.
I agree.
Just get on with it.
Daniel McAlpine, thanks for joining us again, Daniel. Hi guys from South Africa. Can you believe it? I am seeing Celtic for the first time playing a league game in 45 years. We have just got a new channel, ESPN. It's just amazing. Hail, hail. Well, enjoy your day,
Fantastic.
Daniel. Hopefully we can get a result for you in this second half. Raffaello Pietro. Julian's tendency to get sucked into physicals with journeymen target men is a serious worry. That's what we were touching on before, David. Now, we're looking again at the ball possibly going out. Is that as clear cut, do you think, Colin?
think
Did
that's
that
out.
ball go out?
Definitely.
You think?
That's out, aye.
100%.
100%? But again, you don't switch off, do you?
No,
you don't
this is
switch
so
off.
silly.
Yeah. You don't
That's
switch off.
probably Brown as well. If we're going to pull up Julian, you've got to pull up Brown there.
He's got the wrong side of him there, Kevin, isn't he?
That's half-hearted. That's
I'd like to see it through the other angle to see what other defensive cover Julian had behind him.
Yeah, but it was poor defensive play from two of the most experienced players in Celtic's lineup.
let's not be beat about the bush here. None of the goalkeepers have had anything to do.
No,
That's-
quiet. Statistics just came up there that the Kabamba for Kilmarnock had twice the touches that Edwards had. So I'm saying we're trying to play the ball over the top to him, and it's the wrong tactics.
Maybe Kamala's better.
Of running over the top.
Running over the top,
We'll see if I can't see Neil Lennon making any changes because he's not famed for making half-time changes. But we'll see how it opens up in the second half. There are options on the bench. We'll keep going through some of the comments. Clarkey 1516 JJA. Julian makes too much mistakes. We need a backup centre back because we've only got two defenders, and it's something we've been banging on about and banging a drum about over the last few weeks on the podcast. The centre half is
Well, it's
a
going to be.
must.
We'll have a centre half. If one of Julian or Raya gets injured, it will be certainly presented as a centre half crisis, won't it? I mean, that's a certainty. I mean, your go-to guy at the moment is Hatem El Hamid, I suppose. If one of those two is injured, but beyond that, we're into
Beaton territory.
near Beaton territory, and then it really is the sort of untried and untested below that.
What I'm maybe worried about as well was the fact is Julian seems to struggle on the plastic pitch against the physical guy.
Mm-hmm.
You would have thought he would have got that out of his system by now. You would have thought he would have learned it and got it out of his system, so it doesn't affect him again. The fact it's affecting him is a worry about his mindset. It's not his ability, it's his mindset for me, which is worrying.
He seems to get genuinely kind of rattled by these, journeyman physical frontmen that some of the teams have. It's odd.
It's a state of mind, Kevin.
It's
a state of mind. Boston George 77 of you are contacting us from Boston, and all the best, George. Time to change to 3-5-2 for the second half. That kind of wholesale change isn't in Lennon's makeup, is it?
No, and if you look at that, then I'd imagine we'd have to bring on El Hamid. So who would then drop out? Would you have to drop Brown out? Because Christie's had a good game so far. McGregor or Brown's probably the only ones that would drop out there, because I'd imagine you'd keep Taylor and Frimpong for the width. I don't know. It's a big change. I don't think it would affect us too much at the back. But we just need to start creating more.
We do. Lawrence Conley points out that blue being the national colour of Ireland, I can see that as perhaps why they suggested it. Did they not give you some stats about how sports jerseys that were blue sold more than any other sports jerseys in America or something along those lines?
I can't remember that, but I think what they says it was because we were a Scottish team and it was like a sort of dark blue that they were looking at. If I remember.
Psycho Candy, midfield haven't been great, created nothing. Well, what's your thoughts been on the midfield situation? Because we had a good discussion, and it's often thought of as the area of the pitch where we're best covered. Have they impressed you today? Has there been an issue in the midfield?
Is bringing Cham on, what we spoke at length about, going to change this?
No,
The
not
come on-
today. This is not a game for Incham. It's a sort of game where he will get bypassed, in my opinion. And I think it would exacerbate the problem rather than improving it. But I mean, I agree. The midfield has not impressed so far today, and with far too many aerial clearances from the back four straight to Edouard or aimed hopefully at Edouard for my liking.
And another point from Lawrence, time for El Hamid for Frimpong along to go 3 at the back. Again, yeah, you could mix it up, but I just don't see Neil Lennon making wholesale changes,
No, and I don't see that being the one. I can't see him trusting Forrest to come back and try and make the defensive tackles. I see, obviously, Frimpong took that knock in the first half, and he seems to have recovered quite well. He's trying to get the balls across, but that's where we're struggling. We're not getting the balls into the box. The crosses are hitting the first man, and we're not playing through the defence either. So there's a bit of a lack of creativity, and it's a case of maybe trying something else in the second half. Do you know, I wouldn't be against us dropping Scott Brown for the second half and trying to put an attacking option on, because I don't think this is a game where we're going to need someone like Brown to sit in front of the defence and break up the play.
I'll predict that we don't make any changes until about 60 or 70 minutes.
Well, that's probably
and we'll
going to be
try
the
and
case,
try and grind them down, Colin. And again, I'm only saying that because it's in the nature of Neil Lennon to go out in the second half and give the guys a chance to actually regroup.
I think you're spot on.
You think they're in there getting a rocket?
Got to be.
Well, the Celtic Ray suggests that it could easily have been a situation where we subbed 5 players off at half time, poor at the back, zero creativity in midfield, and zero service to Eddie. The service to Eddie, as you say, the big high ball. And by the way, there's no one better than bringing a ball like that down, shielding it, holding it up. Yeah. But you look at him, he's got 4 guys round about him and nowhere to put it.
Nowhere to put it, no. No outball for him.
I've been more disappointed with the wing play and the amount of times that Elahousse has cut inside and his final ball's been poor, or we've lost that ball in the final third when we've managed to turn the Kilmarnock defence, when we've dragged somebody out of position, and it's that final ball for me.
I'm just loving the fact that you call him Elahousse.
For the Belahousse.
Lawrence Conley, when junior clubs can provide a grass pitch, there is no excuse for professional teams not to. As long as there is an allowance for it, David, and it's a cheaper option, there will be plenty of plastic pitches in the top.
I've actually a lot of sympathy with plastic pitches in professional football at the lower levels, because so many clubs are struggling to make ends meet. And I think, frankly, after what we've all lived through in the last 5 or 6 months, the case for artificial pitches is possibly even stronger, because no income for many clubs, really struggling. And it undoubtedly makes financial sense. Junior clubs don't have the overheads that professional clubs do, and I think at below the top tier, I think there's absolutely a case to be made for artificial pitches. Top tier, I'd like to see grass. Thanks very much, and I know I'm preaching to converted in that regard.
Yeah, but you've got to treat it. You've got to treat it like a grass pitch. You've got to spend money on it. You can't make it end up looking like a student's carpet like that one is.
Well, that one was laid new at the start of last season, I think, the Kilmarnock one, and it does it already. As you say, it looks like a well-worn living room carpet. It's not. It doesn't look good.
The best one was East End Park, and they were quite early doors, weren't they, when they got the plastic pitch? And the players, there's some brilliant pictures. I mean, it's bad enough with the wee black specks flying up, but you could actually see the sections moving, like the square was moving. And on the first game, I forget who they were playing, but someone done a Klinsmann from the crowd. The pitch invaded and done a Klinsmann on the AstroTurf, and there's a great picture of him standing up, and he's got
3rd-degree burns
all the way down, and he's got a necklace on, a chain. It's got a Rangers badge on it. Rangers weren't even playing in the game. So yeah, check your Google images. I think there's a place that
I remember
always
the old
tackle.
ones at Loftus Road QPR and Luton Town back in the whenever it was back in the 80s. I mean, it really was like playing on concrete then. I mean, massive improvement since then. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt about that. Technology's moved on, but I think a lot of teams, I think they've got a psychological hang up about playing on the surface, and I think they start almost a goal down, and not just in Scotland, but in England as well. There's some similar issues.
The Astro Turf was first utilised in an American stadium called the Astro Dome, hence the name. And a lot of the turf that we now see isn't actually Astro Turf, but it's just obviously like calling a Hoover or a Dyson a Hoover. But it's going to be one of these.
Clubs in England who've got 3G surfaces go nuts when you refer to it as AstroTurf, because they regard it as derogatory. And obviously in England it's only National League level and below where the artificial surfaces are allowed. But it's exactly the same stuff as we've got here at Kilmarnock or at Livingston or Hamilton. But I just think it gets inside the players' heads.
Definitely.
And it's the same National League in England. Exactly the same issues, same debate.
about how they shouldn't be allowed and so on and so forth. But I think there's much more case for having them tier 5 in England than tier 1 in Scotland.
We're just kicking off the second half, gents. It's 1-1. Has your predictions changed for this game? David, how do you see it panning out in the second half?
Well, my prediction was 2-0, so I'd definitely like to change that. I think... well, this is more of a struggle than I'd hoped. It's not necessarily more of a struggle than I anticipated. I'm still backing Celtic to win, but by the odd goal in 3, so 2-1.
Colin, how do you see the second half going?
Again, I suggested 3-0 at the start of the game. Probably going to have to change that now to 3-1. I think if we can get one pretty earlier on in the second half, we'll probably get one again late on. I think what we've got to do is we've got to start taking shots. Take some shots from the edge of the box. The goalkeeper was certainly very iffy at the goal. Let's get some shots in at him. Let's see how he handles the pressure.
Kevin, you said 4-2 at the beginning of the game. Obviously, you'd be happy with that result. Do you see it? Do you see this game having 6 goals in it?
I don't, but I'm going to say that we'll score 3 in the second half and Kilmarnock will score their second in the 95th minute.
Comment from Facebook. Kilmarnock's offered absolutely nothing in the game. Our heads have dropped since the goal. We badly need a centre half, or if not 2, because anytime a big strong striker is up against Dyer and Julian, they are all over the place. And you're kind of echoing some of the thoughts that we've had. I'm looking at this game, it gets to 60 minutes, and what's ringing in my mind is it's a kind of perfect opportunity for a Lee Griffiths style player to come on. So I know when you're thinking of Lee in his career maybe coming to a premature end at Celtic, this is the type of game you'd throw him on and he would do something.
Mm-hmm. But maybe that's where Kilmarnock can come on and make a difference. As Kevin saying earlier, if we can get the ball over the top to him, it's something Lee Griffiths loved to do, was to chase onto a ball. So
yeah, that's absolutely Kilmarnock's style, isn't it?
Yeah, so, exactly. So maybe he will be the man to change this game.
Do you bring off Eddie though? Because again, his performances have been down to the way that we've kind of set up, isn't it?
No, we'll probably go 4-4-2. I don't think we'll change much of it.
Who would you take off for that move then, Colin?
I think if we're still pushing for the goal, then it would probably be Brown. He offers probably the least going forward. We're at a situation now, actually, which I was meaning to bring up earlier, that both Dicker and Power are on yellow cards. Mm-hmm. So they're one bad tackle away from being sent off in this game, totally changing again. I'd like to try and stretch them there and see if they have got to commit that last ditch tackle.
It looks as though Frimpong's going to be one of the most fouled players in the Scottish game this season.
Yeah. Tierney was like that as well.
And it's unfortunate because, I think when he came into the side, he was an unknown quantity. And how does Scottish football deal with that?
They don't.
They just boot him.
They foul unknown quantities.
Yeah, they just boot him.
That's how it's dealt with. I wince every time Frimpong's tackled. Same way as I held my breath every time Kieran Tierney was tackled. He gets some very, very heavy tackles, does Frimpong, and obviously last season he picked up a bad injury. He
did. It looked a lot worse at the time, didn't it? In fact, was it not the Livingston game that we mentioned, the Tommy Roderick game? So the comments are still coming in. Keep them coming. We're going out live on Twitter, Facebook and YouTube. It's all about being interactive and going out live so that the reaction is immediate. So keep the comments coming in. Kevin at the penalty spot. 2 wide boys not in the game. Mo and James. Well, I've been disappointed actually with El Yunusi. I'm a big fan of El Yunusi, and I think if there is going to be a change, he might be the chap that comes off.
I would agree with that. Just about to say that. It's a good point that Kevin makes. I'd maybe think about El Yunusi off, Klamala on, and kind of move Christie out to left, and go with a kind of 4-4-2, as unfashionable as that may seem. But that you can, as Colin said, I mean, very, very clearly the dimensions of this pitch have been changed. It's been narrowed and it's been shortened by a couple of yards in all 4 directions. And I think Celtic need to move to sort of more compact through the middle shape to counter that.
We're starting to see the time wasting coming in there as well. Callum Waters, an ex-Celtic player, kicking the ball away down the park. Kilmarnock will be absolutely delighted if they manage to keep us like this. So we really need to force it and push for the goals.
That was a good opportunity.
But better just taking the shot. That's what I was saying earlier.
Absolutely. Martin Devine. Julian has been beaten by Kambama. Feet and pace, not just his size for me. That's the worry. I think it does go back. It's a carbon copy, David, the London Dykes. And that's a player who has almost got a move out of a couple of performances against Julian. I know he's a big, tough guy to handle, against a lot of the Scottish teams, but he shouldn't be getting a move to Ibrox, surely, or Celtic Park. You wouldn't have thought.
Wouldn't have thought so, but it's been, it has been spoken about in sort of serious terms that he's sort of on the cards for a move to a much bigger team.
I think they turned down a bid of over £1.5 million for him last week. So interesting.
It is. It's very interesting, and it goes back to a point that was made about buying Scottish players players from the Scottish game. It's something that Celtic used to operate in that market, David. When you look at most of the, if not all of the signings in the early days of Jock Stein's period at Celtic, you're buying within the Scottish game, and I think, I'm not saying we should operate the same as Hibs, but Hibs have done it particularly well this season, haven't they?
Right up until the mid 1990s, Celtic bought almost exclusively from within Scotland, and then as football changed, Celtic's recruitment model changed. But there is I think a case for looking closer to home at times. Talking about players who should have worn the hoops, one that occurred to me, Paul, was going back a wee bit, but Kevin Gallagher.
Oh yeah,
with his family links to Patsy Gallagher, and he was there was a time when he was one of the most spoken about forward players in British football, and I'm sure given half a chance, Celtic would love to have had him on their books.
What a ton of pace he had. I mean, the Scottish Cup final 1988, that's the moment when you see what he did there. And as you say, he went away down to England and never came back. He had a brilliant career down there. But yeah, he was a Celtic style player, wasn't he?
Absolutely.
There was an interview with Kevin Gallagher where he says that the weight in the Gallagher name weighed on him, and he knew that would have weighed on him if he would have went to Celtic.
I can understand that.
And it was something that he didn't want any added pressure, so he wanted to go to England to prove himself.
I tell you what, boys, what do you think about there not being the fans there now? We've just watched Celtic have the last sort of 5 minutes of possession, driving forward. You know that if the fans were there, there's that sort of roar that drives the team forward. Do you think we're Celtic's going to be affected by that this season, when in games like this where it's quite tight, not having the backing and the extra 10% coming from the crowd? Do you think that's going to have a big impact on us?
I think it goes back to something Kevin said earlier, and it's all about the state of mind. It really is. They might have to approach things a wee bit differently, Colin, because, as you rightly say, the influence of the support is undoubted. So Neil Lennon recognises that as a player and as a manager twice over, and I just think it's a slightly different mental approach to games like that. You're absolutely right. You think about some of the victories that we've managed to win in the last minute, etc. You speak to the centenary team, and they talk about the impact of the fans behind you. So I think absolutely it would make an effect, but hopefully we've identified that prior to the the issues that it might have caused.
I think it's possibly more of an issue for Celtic away from home. Yeah. Home games often, the minute somebody fails to control the ball first time or misplaces a pass, you can feel the crowd, anxious on their backs. Away games, I think the Celtic support tends to be more out and out supportive of the team. And the end towards which Celtic are kicking at the moment is the end at which the away fans would have been. Had there been away fans, you just see everybody trying to suck the ball into the net, and I do think we're missing that.
Callum Davidson's obviously typing a message for our live stream there, so we'll wait until it comes through. Gary Doonan, we are in a hard game as normal down here. Totally agree with you, Gary. Even the Invincible season, Friday night game, and the treble season, the Brunei game, as it will always be known. We were in a dogfight. I think we're in another dogfight now.
Yeah, we had some really poor results down at Rugby Park over the last couple of years. I think we were 1-0 up and ended up losing 2-1 in the last minute.
Yes.
So it is a hard place to go, but you just kind of hope that we can eventually go over that and start putting teams like Kilmarnock to the sword, because with all due respect to Kilmarnock, I don't expect they'll finish in the top 6 this year, and that's kind of 3 points you want to kind of guarantee yourself when we're going for 10 in a row.
From Facebook, once again, El Yunusi has not done enough so far. So much hype about him. He needs to do more and be more consistent with us, becoming clear why we can get him in on loan. I've been disappointed because I've been a massive fan of El Yunusi, since he came in last season. I think his injury, and then he came back too soon in the League Cup final, didn't he? That really hampered his entire campaign. But I was looking at him this season, a fresh start, and he's not done it for me yet. Is he the guy you would take off?
He's the guy I'd take off. He's
Yep.
contributed very little this afternoon, but it's surprising and it's a shame because he was one of the standouts for me in the pre-season matches. So I expected more from him.
When you're saying about guys like Ncham, this isn't a game for Ncham. I don't think this is a game for Elyounoussi. I don't think he gets to play his style of football when the park's as narrow as this and when you're getting almost zero time on the ball. So I think he's probably right. He'll be the first one to come off today.
There seems to be a bit of frustration in his performance as well, truthfully. He's dived into a couple of challenges.
Yeah.
I think he knows himself, his touches out, he knows himself that he's having a poor game and he's maybe trying too hard to overcompensate.
At this stage, Kevin, are you looking to perhaps pull off Elyounoussi, push Christie out wide, go two up front?
Yes, definitely. I think the first 10 minutes of the second half, nothing's really changed. We're still struggling to create chances. We're still taking too many touches before we switch play. I think we need to get the ball forward quicker, but better quicker. So here's Ryan Christie. I mean, that's the only reason he's taking a shot there is because there's nothing on.
Yeah. The thing that frustrates me when Celtic go up to Rugby Park or any of these sort of games is like we seem to struggle and it's maybe a 2-1 or a 2-0 and then the following week they'll play maybe Motherwell at the same ground and Motherwell win 3 or 4-0. It's quite frustrating.
And that's what every side raises the game against Celtic, and that's what I think, particularly pundits down south that try to, belittle Celtic's achievements so far with 9 in a row and potentially 10 in a row to come, overlook the pressure to win week after week after week. With every team in Scotland raising a game against you,
Absolutely.
Should not be overlooked, and it's an extraordinary testament to the professionalism of the guys who've been there for most of all of the 9 in a row run. Scott Brown, James Forrest, Callum McGregor, that they've been able to maintain that level of consistency for such a long period of time.
You just have to look at the number of players that have came up that haven't been able to handle it.
Yes,
haven't
exactly.
been able to perform.
And sent home was to think again. Absolutely.
I remember Joe Ledley saying when he left Celtic, that's what he missed.
Yeah.
When he ended up going to Crystal Palace, he says, what I missed was the fact that we had to win.
The sheer intensity of it.
I think it's probably now time Celtic start looking at the bench.
Back post is what they need to be looking at right there because that boy was left.
That's commanding. That's good to see.
No, I think your 60 minutes is the mark, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's the mark, and Lenny will be looking to make a change then, I would think. But Mark Bradley, we need to shake up here. So Mark agrees with us. Thanks for the message via YouTube, Mark. Keep them coming. Killie have us right where they want after 49 minutes played, but we're almost 10 minutes beyond. Very disappointing. Yep, it is. And Kilmarnock could soak this up all day long and hope themselves that they might get a wee breakaway.
That's what I was saying before the game. They'll set up to counter us and they've done it very well so far. Celtic will probably need to change this up. Things like that that ball can get brought down. Let's get the ball on the deck. There's far too much of the ball going up in the air and it is suiting Kilmarnock.
Ken Walsh, why hasn't the ref having a word with the Kilmarnock players every time they kick the ball away? I think, Kevin, you already picked up on that. The time wasting already, quite early doors in the second half. But I also think that some of the tackling's been a bit over the top as well.
You can see that now with Power and Dicker on yellow cards. Celtic need to kind of capitalise on that. The Kilmarnock midfield are known for throwing in a couple of tackles here and there to test the referee's patience. So let's go for it.
Well, we're going to have to, Colin, but as I say, the big thing at the moment is you've got to make the change because we've come out 15 minutes into the second half and it's still looking a wee bit kind of...
It's just more of the same.
It's looking the same as it was in the first half, yeah, certainly after the goal went in. So, yeah, we need to make that change and it's going to be interesting to see if he acts quickly. The worst thing that you can do is just sit on this and hope that it resolves itself. We need to take action now.
Again, with the long ball, we have to try and get the ball on the deck and play football. This long ball's not working for us.
Paul Cardona, we need to show some urgency. It's one of these games where, I think we're all over this mob, says Jason Christie. We could have the vast majority of the possession, but it's about breaking this side down now, and I think we need to change it. Absolutely. You need to change the shape now, Kevin, and I think, having someone up there with the man who just lost the ball there will make the change. So hopefully Lennon's thinking along those lines.
It gives Kilmarnock something else to think about as well, something else to deal with. rather than just these long balls that are no sticking to Edouard here. And we're going to dominate the majority of games in Scotland, but it's what we do with the ball, and we're not doing nothing with the ball, and that's...
You're looking at a side here, though, that were expertly coached by Stevie Clarke. And Stevie Clarke is one of the guys who shuts up shop at the back. He's very tight defensively. And, as you were saying at the very beginning of the game, the squad, it's not changed dramatically. So the players have already got that kind of mentality that Stevie Clarke gave them. And Alex Dyer's done terrifically well to continue with. They're a defensive side.
Yeah,
we need to break it down. That's
yeah. I mean, the difference between this Celtic performance today and the one last Sunday, where sort of electric forward moves with passes to feet and the surging runs down the wing, the difference could not be greater. And just a sort of microcosm of the entire game there. 2 or 3 players running out of options, and playing a backward pass, and then Scott Brown, of all people, attempting a highly speculative shot from 30-35 yards that went well wide.
I know
we're out of ideas here.
I know we're into sort of last half hour of the game, but I think with this 5 subs option that we've got, we should really try and utilise that and maybe start making the subs a bit earlier if the game's not going for us. If you bring 2 on, you've still got another option of bringing another 3 on to change it again. So we shouldn't really be shy in making these subs.
The penalty spot Kevin is wondering why no one has actually ran at the 2 Kelly players who have been booked.
Good point.
And it is a good point because, as you were saying, Colin, you've got 2 guys on a booking there, and we've got the players capable of doing that, and attacking them. So it's one of these things, we could be talking in 5 minutes' time after a moment in the game that completely changes it. Celtic have got that type of player. I don't think Kilmarnock have, but obviously we've also got the type of player who might make the mistake that lets them in. So El Yunusi's, for me, had a poor game, and it's time. He's giving away free kicks now, Kevin. I mean, that's 2 in the last 5-10 minutes, so it's time for El Yunusi to come off, I think.
I think maybe the change that also could be made is to take off Forrest for El Hamid, put El Hamid to right back and push Frimpong a bit further forward. Gives us another option. Frimpong's definitely not scared to take on a man, and his pace is going to cause Kilmarnock a bit of problems. Forrest it's just one of these games he's just not got into it really, but you just got to look at other options.
Kevin, from the penalty spot, get Paddy on to link up with Eddie. He has been starved of service. Yes, we totally agree with that. Get Klimala on. It's great that we call the Polish player Paddy, isn't it? Paddy Klimala. Brilliant. Francie, dub LU, it's a horrible watch on this surface. It's not the best, but again, Celtic need to combat that. We're up against it. I always remember Messi talking like that when they went to play the anti-football of Rangers at Ibrox. Remember, and he came away moaning about it being anti-football, but he was told, well, you're the guy that needs to open that up. Celtic are the team with the creative players here, and we need to open this up. And now we're getting pinned back, so it's time for a change, Lenny. 63 minutes in, still 1-1. The Blue Lou scene. If I was Encham, I'd ask for a move. If he can't get a game in this midfield, he never will.
Said to you, I thought
would he make a difference now, Colin, at this stage?
Do you know, I know, David, you don't agree, but I think he would make the difference here. I think he's got that extra range of passing where he'll try and break down the midfield. And I think if we get a ball through the middle to, say, for example, Paddy coming on, get him up against Dickon and Power in midfield, get him up against the 2 centre-halves in Broadfoot and Finlay, and you just never know what will happen.
Any player not selected for a game like this tends to sort of grow in stature on the sidelines. But,
I know.
Absolutely. That was close.
Yeah, I always remember that. The longer that Strachan refused to play Baldy, the better he got. Yeah. Same with Riordan, the better these players get. But we certainly do need a change. That was a good effort, though. Keep the comments coming in via YouTube, Twitter and Facebook. Jason Christie. When we play wingers, it takes Forrest and El Yunusi out of the game. Are they less effective when we're playing the 2 overlapping fullbacks, do you think?
Some interesting substitutions coming on here. It looks as if El Hamid and Klimala are coming on.
Klimala's obviously seen Kevin's shed. Which brings to mind Sved. Where's Sved?
A Lord-looking figure.
Whatever happened to him?
Sheved.
Another
That's the
couple of
new-
£1 million down the toilet.
That's the new book coming out from Celtic Retail this season. Where's Sved? We've got to try and find them.
So do you think it does affect you when you're putting so much onus on the two full-backs? Is that affecting Forrest and El Yunusi?
It could well be. The wee triangles we had on the left-hand side in the first half are not there anymore. I don't know if Kilmarnock have maybe made a change to combat that, but they're definitely not there.
There's a man down.
They took off Rory McKenzie at half-time, bringing on a more defensive-minded player. I think the problem Celtic have, when we've got the four wingers as such, with the two full-backs and the two wingers, it kind of encourages the wingers to come inside, and with the park being as narrow as this, there's just no space for them to do that.
Did Eddie lift his hands there? Was it Stuart Findlay, ex-Celtic player? He's done extremely well, hasn't he?
Went to Newcastle
Yeah.
to their under-23 squad and then came back up the road. By all accounts, he's done fairly well. So looking at the subs here, and it is Elianusi and Frimpong to come off. Interesting. Frimpong obviously taking that knock in the first half. Maybe Lennon thinks he's just not recovered from
As he
it.
went to a free,
It's good to see. Well,
as he went to Forest.
you seen El Hamid giving it the three, didn't you?
Held up a 3, didn't he?
It's good to see El Hamid back in because he did impress, didn't he? You know, when he first signed, and it was just so unfortunate with the injury. So it's good to see him back in the side.
3 at the back by the looks of it. Forrest playing the right wing back role.
It's the right move to make. I mean, I thought it was a bold move to be making at half time, but he's made it, 66 minutes in, and hopefully we can start creating some more chances and cut through this 10-man defence at Kilmarnock here.
Well, that's the most important bit here. We've actually got to create those chances. Now, that was an interesting one there with Taylor.
There didn't seem to be many claims, even for Taylor himself.
Even though we've changed to a 3-5-2, we've still got to create the service for Edward and for Klamala, because they've not had a single chance yet in the second half. So we need to get the ball into them and see what they can do.
Meanwhile, McGregor is shooting on sight. I think that's what we were talking about as well. There wasn't enough of that, was there? That was almost reminiscent of Roderick's. If it had nestled in the back of the net, the only thing missing is obviously the stands are completely empty today. Matt Bradley, let's call it as it is. We have hardly created a chance. Even our goal was freakish, not impressive. Not impressive, but I'm not panicking quite yet. There's still plenty to go, and we've just made the changes that we're kind of shouting for as well. Klamala, Kevin, what's your thoughts on Klamala?
It'll be interesting to see how he links up with Eddie here. A couple of times that Eddie's managed to bring the ball down, there's been nobody near him, and he's having to do it himself. So if they can get closer together, like the way Griffiths and Eddie got closer together when we played a 3-5-2 last season, then it could be interesting here. But Kamala's got a bit of power. He likes to play on the last man, so if we're not going to change trying to get the ball forward quickly, then Kamala might get on the end of something here.
Do you know,
Sorry, go ahead, Colin.
I was going to say we have to change how we're playing. We have to stop this ball over the top. We can play a ball through defences. Look at the goal that Klamala scored last week. It was a ball from defence that split the midfield and played them in through one-on-one with the last defender. Let's kind of get this ball in the deck here, because this ball over the top's not worked for us. And we've got 20 minutes left. Let's try something different.
Gordon Wilson were lacking urgency, Celtic. Well, we've made the change, and that was a popular change, I think. And hopefully we can start showing a wee bit more urgency. Although it was a freakish goal, you've got to shoot in sight, especially when you've got players like Christie, McGregor. These guys can score from distance, But I will be interested to see Klamala. Kevin has likened him to looking like a Legia Warsaw ultra. But fair play to him to going away and getting himself conditioned and coming back in great shape,
He spent his lockdown very profitably by the looks of things, getting himself in shape. But I mean, Colin's right. We need to get the ball on the deck here, and I mean, if we persist in playing these aerial balls through to Klamala, then we really have gone astray. But I've been very disturbed by the way that the Celtic midfield has been, I think, bypassed for much of the afternoon with the defenders just going aerial in the general direction of Odds and Edouard, and he's been without support all afternoon.
Psycho Candy, thanks for your message. Keep them coming via YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. And Psycho Candy is just hoping someone pulls a bit of magic out of the bag, and so are we. But who is that player? We've got a few who could pull a bit of magic out. I think Edouard, for me, even though he's had a tough afternoon, it's not been off his doing, and I'm pretty sure that there's still a wee bit of magic left in his feet.
It takes me back to Dens Park last season, the season before. When it was kind of one of those rough games. Lennon, it was the season before, Lennon had just came in, and we looked as if we were going to create absolutely nothing, and then the 90th minute up he pops with the last minute winner.
95th minute, I think, wasn't it? It was so late,
And Lennon went down to have a dance with the corner flag.
Right.
Colin, I'm giving you permission to do that yourself. If we do score a winner this late on, go for a wee run. Go for a run. Go for a wee run in the studio there. But it's moments like this that Klimala, if he hasn't already done so, he can rubber stamp his name on that. Of
course he can.
That first team sheet.
It's a wonderful opportunity.
Absolutely. And it shows you how quickly things can change, because when Griffiths got back into the side against Hibs, like you say, you're thinking, well, that's fine, he looks sharp. But again, he's back down the third choice, particularly if Klimala impresses, having come on here. But here we are, back on the back foot again. Hopefully this comes to nothing.
That's better from Julian.
That's better, yeah.
It's much better, and he's made 40 yards as well,
Good.
This is better from Celtic.
As I was saying at half time, Kilmarnock made the sub, Rory McKenzie went off, and the number 3, who seems to be a kind of fullback, came on for them, and since then they've not really ventured forward as much. They're happy to sit with this one each, and as you say, Paul, it's up to us to break them down and to be the difference makers here.
Gordon Wilson, Klimala, can you change this game? I think the big change will be he's going to give Edouard an out ball, isn't he? Mm-hmm. He was holding that ball up so well, but we know where to go. So hopefully if Klimala can make the runs that he's famed for, we can still break this side down. It must be exhausting to be under the cosh for 70 minutes of the game, David.
Yeah, absolutely. And for all that he's not been able to wield much influence on the game, Odsonne Edouard's put in a shift this afternoon.
6 in a row, here we go. You need to change your name. We've won a few since then. Always a struggle here. Hopefully we'll get a needed lucky break. That's all it takes. But in a game like this, it's so precarious, isn't it, to be sitting at 1-1 72 minutes into the game. And that's just clumsy. That's clumsy. There's nothing malicious in that from Scott Brown, I don't think. Big tumbleweed moment from Colin there. Did you crack a joke that I missed? Sorry, Colin. Francie Dubb, I'll need to watch back on that. I missed it. I must have been watching the game.
Thanks, Francie.
Thanks, Francie, for your support. Keep the comments coming in. Gary Doonan, definitely the overlappers affected us in the Rangers game at Celtic Park in December. It's a good point. You've got the overlaps, and then you're looking at El Yunusi hardly being in the game in that first half or for the first hour of the game. Now, all of a sudden, Celtic are defending a set piece from Kilmarnock. Jason Christie, now we should see the best from Forrest. Well, let's hope so, because we haven't seen much from Forrest. But again, that has happened in the past, and he comes up with that outside of the right foot.
He's one of the ones who can wield some magic. We need something just now. We need somebody to pull a cat out of the bag.
I tell you what, it's been 10 minutes now since the sub, almost. How long more do you give it before we have to go again? We've got another 3 subs we can make. Who else can you bring on? You're looking at the bench. It's got Sorrow and Cham, Bolingoli, Robertson, Karamoko. Is there anyone really there that you think could change the game?
You're looking for a creator, aren't you, Colin? You're looking for someone to come in and create something. And that is, despite what we've spoken about today, that is the type of thing that Encham could do. Whether or not he fancies this is another question. Encham for me would be the obvious choice.
I think Encham for Brown would be the shout, because he's more of an attacking option than what Brown is.
Is it a difficult change to make?
Do you know, it's always difficult when you take your captain off. But I think even he has to look at this and realise that Brown's not as much of an attacking threat as Encham could be. And Encham still offers that same protection at the back. With Brown on a yellow card, maybe it's a wee bit easier.
It is, and we've said before, there's no harm in Brown not playing from time to time. He's still the captain, he would still have that influence. The point was made last week, Tom Boyd was the captain and didn't play near the end of his career, as did Paul Lambert for some time. So you know, it's not a bad shout. We certainly do need the more creative players entering the fray for the last 15 minutes of this game, because it's no disaster to draw a game this early on. But obviously we want to continue and ensure that no one's pulling away at the top of the league, Colin. Daniel McAlpine, who I think is watching his first games from South Africa, don't you think the team need 4 or 5 games to start settling down? 10 in a row must be a big pressure on the players. I'm sure every game Celtic plays is a big pressure.
I'd agree with you there. And unfortunately, when you're in this situation, there's probably not the 4 or 5 games to settle down when it gets into a season like this. So, again, I think what this shows today is we're still lacking in the squad depth, especially with the attacking options. You're missing a Mikey Johnston who would maybe come on here. A Jetty, if he does sign, is another one. But then looking at that at the moment, the only real attacking player that's on the bench that we could bring on at the minute is Karamoko Dembele, and he's 17 years old, so it's a lot of pressure to put on someone.
How far away is Mikey Johnson from fitness? Anybody know?
6 weeks.
6 weeks
now. Yeah.
6 weeks.
Jason Christie, Edouard is missing Griffiths. I mean, it's a comment I made earlier. Griffiths is that player you're talking about, Colin. He's the player at this stage that you're looking to throw on to grab a goal. And in all likelihood, he will grab a goal. He'll chase everything. He becomes a nuisance. Remember the 2-1 game last season against Hamilton? He didn't score, but he was a nuisance from the moment he came on the pitch, and we ended up winning that very, very late on. That's the kind of change that we don't have at the moment.
When you go back to, I think it was maybe January 2019, when we were at Rugby Park and we were looking for the goal, and we threw on Bayo and we threw on Burke and we threw on Weah. There was more attacking options, it was more attacking threats. And just at the minute we've managed to put Klamala on, but that's probably as far as we're going to get today.
You mentioned a few names there, and going back to one of the previous points about players coming to Scotland and finding it difficult, where you could probably throw in Masonda into that list as well, and Burke. 3 big name players, big transfer fees, and they didn't make it up here.
The Burke one's interesting. I don't know if there's as much of a footballer in Burke than what his transfer fees suggest. I remember listening to the commentary of a Scotland game, and at half time they spent the whole 15 minutes suggesting how he'd be a better 100 metre runner than what he is a footballer. He is an athletically built person, but I think his close control and things like that really let him down, and at the stage of the career that he's at, it really should be developed by now.
Matt Bradley, this dreadful performance, no matter how it ends up with a win, I hope, offers genuine hope for our challengers this season. Is it a wee bit premature to be talking about?
It's been a bad performance, but the players that you want to be on top form have no been on it whatsoever. It's a ground that we usually struggle, but still time. I still expect a bit of magic. Somebody's going to produce a bit of magic.
Tell you someone who would probably had a good game on his day, someone we mentioned earlier, Tony Stokes, would have loved a ground like this.
You're talking about a bit of magic. We've seen that bit of magic previously at Rugby Park from the likes of Nakamura, Kevin, and also Tommy Rogic, who we've mentioned already. But remember the Three Amigos at Rugby Park? Remember that?
Aye. Fantastic second half performance.
It was, and the whole thing opened up, didn't it? Remember Di Canio, the way he was able to open up that Kilmarnock defence, and the famous picture of the three of them, plus Andy Tom celebrating the goal in the Bumblebee. I'm just thinking positively here, you know.
Yeah,
sorry to mention Paolo, but I'm thinking back to days gone by when we didn't win the league that season. So,
this has been this is not that unusual a sort of performance from Celtic away from home, I'd have to say. I mean, it's people talk about 4 or 5 games to get going or whatever, but this has been like an awful lot of away games that I've seen that Celtic have won by the odd goal or drawn. Mm-hmm. And I still think a win by the odd goal is well within their capabilities, but someone needs to do something.
Take a look at that there. There was Klamala and Edouard, and I think Forrest was just about backing them up. But there were 6 or 7 Kilmarnock players around them there, and they weren't getting the chance on the ball. We have got to go up and support them.
The thing that you mentioned there, David, how many games does Celtic play like this every season? 15, 20?
Plenty.
And it's having to break down a resolute 10 men behind the ball time and time again. That's exhausting.
The away games are often a hard watch, particularly on these on these artificial pitches, and everybody's sort of standing there patiently behind the goal, waiting. Here's Encham.
Well, someone's looked at Lawrence Conley's point. He said Encham for Brown, and that's exactly what's happening. And I can confirm Lawrence called that, as did Colin.
Called all this up so far.
That's not a disaster for Brown to go off. It's just it's a personnel issue at the moment, and he's not creating enough in the middle of the park. Encham's got that in his locker.
Definitely. And hopefully he'll do this over the next 10 minutes and play the ball through for the winner.
Kevin.
Hear that, he'll have a wild shot and nearly knock the ball to air.
We'll get it up here.
You've been a massive supporter of Encham since he came in, Kevin. You're a big fan of Encham. You reckon he's, on his day, the best technician in Scottish football?
Definitely.
Is he the man that's going to turn this round for us today?
I'm looking for anybody. Anybody to have that wee bit of magic, wee bit of composure, a wee bit of bravery just to pull us out the mire here. Look, it's no a big deal to drop points just now, but even the performances have been, it's been a horrible performance, absolutely horrible, but you've got 8 or 9 players there who are not at the races whatsoever, but we've got to dig it out. We've got 10, 12, 13 minutes to dig this out, and I still fully expect us to dig this out.
I tell you what, people will forget about this performance if the goal goes in and we win 2-1. When all's said and done, it's about the points that's on the table, and if we don't get the 3 points today, it's all about the momentum that gives to the other teams that are sitting up there. So for us and for our momentum, it's just vitally important that we get the next goal.
Listen, that was a fair bit of play by El Hamadi. He's a silky player, isn't he?
Good player, a good player.
It's just
I'm
such a
pleased to
shame.
see him back in the lineup, but we've created so few chances today. Very, very few chances. Most of the shots on goal have been speculative long-range efforts from outside the box or the edge of the box. I can't think back to a single incident throughout the entire game where we say, "Oh, that was close." Something inside the 6-yard box where somebody's gone close and the ball just hasn't broken for them. There's been nothing like that, and that's for me that's one of the most disturbing aspects of this afternoon's effort so far.
The way you can tell that as well is we've actually had very few corners. I think we've maybe had 1 or 2, and we can be a threat at corners, so we're taking that out of our game as well, but not kind of managing to create situations like that.
Boston George 77, bad performance today might not be a bad thing in that it might show the board that we need investment. That's always going to hang over you, isn't it? The fact that if you have a bad result like 4-0 at Tynecastle, remember when Rodgers almost used that as a stick to hit the board with. Look what happens if you don't invest. And I'm pretty sure Kouassi played that day, didn't he? Remember him?
Broken leg, I think, was it not? Did he not play with a broken leg that day?
Is that not the semi-final?
Was it?
Aye.
And Jason Christie, Big Patrick, looks like Bruni. Well, he certainly shaved his head like Bruni, and my partner here in crime, Kevin Graham's done the same. But talking to Legia Warsaw, what about Arthur Borrett signing for them at the age of 40?
Yeah.
Great move for him. He's engrossed. He's engrossed in this move here. Stephen Healy, it's times like this show that we need to spend some money. Yes.
That's an easy excuse,
Yep.
spend money. It doesn't solve anything. It doesn't solve the fact that we haven't had a final ball the whole game. We've got players there that are capable of giving us that final ball, and it just hasn't happened.
I feel as if we're trying to pass the ball into the net here instead of like creating the cross or creating the shot opportunity.
Blue Lucine would love to see the stats on Christie. For me, flatters to deceive too often. I think Christie's played okay today, to be fair. There's been a few others who have been a lot less effective than Ryan Christie. El Yunusi being one of them, and obviously he's been benched as a result of that. But thanks for the comments. Keep them coming. We will stay with you for 30 minutes after. Hopefully we can talk about a Celtic victory. But at this moment in time, we are looking at the clock and it's 83 minutes in. We need to do something pretty sharpish if we've got to get the 3 points here. How one-footed is Taylor, asks Psycho Candy. It's one of these things though. This is a very typical plastic pitch performance from us. Kilmarnock have done well. They've played it to a team.
Absolutely. They have, and you've got to give them credit for that. But I go back to something Colin said a few moments ago. I mean, just the lack of attacking bench strength this afternoon. No Mikey Johnson's out injured. No Lee Griffiths to a degree self-inflicted. But that's where when you know, we talk about squad depth and the need to invest in playing personnel. That's clearly where we're short. And as we discussed earlier, we're only one centre-half injury away from a crisis in that area of the pitch. So I think we're kind of threadbare at the moment for, you know, the stature of club that Celtic are.
I think this is an indication of that, David. Although what Colin says is right, we win the game, papers over a few of those cracks, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. So when we're also looking at Karamoko, who is the offensive player on that bench, is this really the opportunity, or is it the only kind of opportunity he's going to get? Go on, make a name for yourself.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's 5 minutes to go now. You'd be half tempted to say just do it, because the players that are on the park aren't offering anything. So there's time for him to maybe step up and make a name for himself.
Well, you're right, because I mean, in terms of pressure, if nothing happens, we were having a bad game anyway. If he wins the game, he's the hero. But obviously, Kennedy and Lenny are looking at maybe making it would be the final change, because that's,
yes, they can only make three blocks, so they can bring 2 on here. Who the 2 would be, who knows? It looks as if Greg Kelty's just about to come on for Kilmarnock.
Psycho Candy reckons this is torture. It's been frustrating, I think. It's been a frustrating performance from Celtic.
I hope it means the game and not us.
Well, I never qualified that, Colin.
Yeah, exactly.
But let us know, Psycho Candy. Like you guys, I can handle dropping points. However, the lack of creativity is shocking and very unlike us, even at this kind of away ground. That's when you do miss guys on the bench like Griffiths and Roderick, who I've already said I think his time's up at Celtic anyway. But that could have been a good chance, Colin. It certainly could have been a good chance. But it just shows you how easy and how quickly these things can turn around.
What's going on here?
I think Christie dragged.
Oh, come on.
Is he having a look at it?
No, he's giving
it the other way.
To come on.
Brilliant. Spot on, David. Chances have been disappointingly at a minimum. That's also from Francie. But he's not expanded on your moment, Colin. Your tumbleweed moment. Lawrence Conley, Dembele for the last 5 minutes for Forest. Why not?
Why not? Yeah.
Exactly.
What other creative option do we have there? No. So yes, I would agree with you, Lawrence. Thanks for getting involved. Killie are defending like their lives depend on it. Don't they always? Don't they always when it comes to ball and goalies just come on for Taylor? I think Taylor was finding it tough near the last 5-10 minutes there, but again, that's not going to change things round for you, is it, bringing on ball and goalie?
Till he scores the winner.
Alright, we've got a Rangers fan coming in. Rangers won 3-0. Too easy for Scotland's most successful team.
Do you know what?
We welcome the chase. Are you on the wind-up?
Do you know what's interesting? You can welcome the chase, but you're not in first place. So that's an interesting one.
Jason Christie, Forrest needs to go off. He keeps cutting inside when there's loads of room on the wing. Am I right in saying, Colin, we can't make another substitution because we've had our 3 blocks of subs?
Bolly's not on yet, is he?
Aye, that's him just crossing.
Is on? Yeah, that's us. We're done.
And Gary Doonan, going to be a few heart attacks before this month is out. Never mind the season. Scattergun is out. It's 1-1 at Rugby Park. You know, it's been a fairly disappointing performance, but it's not yet a crisis, I wouldn't think, you know. I think the big thing at the moment, we're not beat yet and we've not dropped points just yet, but my frustration is the lack of creative options at this moment in time, and Griffiths would be the boy, wouldn't he, at this stage. So Dembele, it's unfortunate for the young man, but Bolingoli coming on, maybe Taylor picked up a strain or something.
It goes to show you, but when you come down to a place like Rugby Park, they are trying to kick you off the pitch, and if that's the case, then they've done it with 2 of our fullbacks today, and Frimpong and with Taylor. So not to be unexpected, when you go there you can see the 2 midfielders on a yellow card. As Kevin Tate said earlier, we should have had a go at them and we haven't. There's another wasting the ball.
The thing is that I think up to the ball and goalie substitution, which obviously was an injury, or you would suggest it as an injury. I think the substitutions were correct. Whether or not they were made at the right time would then be the question, wouldn't it?
A bit late in the day, you feel.
It was clear things weren't changing, David. 5 minutes into the second half.
Bringing in Cham on, I would have thought maybe bringing Cham on at the same time as Klamala and Elhamed came on.
Stephen T, why is everyone thinking that we are strolling this league? No chance. Again, it's not a crisis. It's 1-1 at Rugby Park, but at the end of the day, it's been a very disappointing performance. I wonder if there's any added time that we could maybe give us hope for a winner, a last push at the end. Have you been impressed with Klimala? Do you think he's been given enough minutes to do something positive?
Not seen anything from him yet. Not seen anything, but in saying that, it's not against Klimala. It's against quite a lot of the players today. Not seen anything from quite a lot of them. If you were having to pick a man of the match out of this, I would probably struggle.
Well, I'm going to ask you for one, Colin, so struggle away. Christopher Smith, Hibs look fantastic. Yeah, they certainly have started well, haven't they?
Yep, definitely. Nisbet looked absolutely outstanding yesterday, a hat-trick. Some people can struggle making that move up to the top league, but he could be one that gets in with 15-20 goals this season.
The whole idea of live streaming is so that we can give Celtic fans the information first and in real time. We don't have to wait until after the match or 6:45 tonight. We're doing it live. So live, in fact, that MSH59 is saying that there's a time delay for him in California, and we're about 30 seconds ahead. So we're doing all right there. We're actually ahead of his stream in California. Jamesy Forrest hasn't had the best game today, unfortunately, and it's one of these things that I would be very loath to criticise Forrest. I don't think he's been the worst, but he's not had his best day today, is he?
No, definitely not, and I think it goes to a point that was mentioned earlier about having the sort of overlapping fullbacks. It brought Forrest inside, and it was just far too packed in the middle of the field for him to create anything. I think we'll be disappointed if we walk away here with the one each. It's certainly not what we'd have expected at the start of the game. Only 2 games in, but momentum's going to be massive this season, so we really need to sort of push on here and hopefully get the winner.
Jason Christie has a wee snipe back at the Rangers fan who joined us. There was absolutely no issue with what the Rangers fan said. He's got his opinion and it wasn't derogatory or anything like that, so fire away, but I'll let Jason answer that to you if you're still watching Celtic, which is a bit strange. Christina McNeil, get it round you. Not quite sure if that's get it round you Celtic, get it round you Rangers, who knows. If it's Rangers fans tuning into a Celtic state of mind, it just shows you the power of what we do, that Rangers fans are tuning in. That's fantastic, Christina. Keep the comments coming.
It just shows you Celtic live rent-free in the heads of the rest of Scottish football.
There's a complacency, says Stephen T, amongst support and at the club, in my opinion. Again, Colin, it's one of these ones whereby that's a bit... it was like a pinball machine at the back there. Let's just make sure we don't do anything silly with a minute to go. It's one of these things. I'm not going to overreact to a 1-1 draw at Rugby Park. It's going to be a long season, and there's going to be a lot of challenges. I don't think Neil Lennon's finished buying yet, but after today's performance as well as a centre half, no matter what happens with Lee Griffiths, we need another striker in, and we are lacking in the wide areas.
Definitely, and I think what the biggest takeaway from this is going to be the defensive error. I don't think Kilmarnock would have had a shot on target that would have troubled us had it not been for the fact that we gave away the penalty. So it's 2 points dropped by ourselves. It's not really a point gained by Kelly as such, that they've not really done much for it.
Barkas has had nothing to do. A very, very quiet game, but to be honest, I think Kilmarnock have been very well organised all afternoon. I think, for my money, that they deserve a point.
Yeah, they do. They do, David.
But very, very disappointing effort by Celtic. But this may be a blessing in disguise, Paul, going forward, because it has highlighted a number of shortcomings. In terms of centre of defence, in terms of width, we were talking about no real pressure on James Forrest for his place in the side, so that's maybe something that needs to be looked at, even if it's not top of the priority list, and just a lack of attacking options generally. And that's it, full time.
Very good, I would say.
It is disappointing. Have a think, gentlemen. Have a think about your man of the match. This is a Celtic state of mind. It is the match live stream, and Celtic have just drawn 1-1 with Kilmarnock at Rugby Park. They've dropped the first 2 points of the season in the second game of the season. So we're going to have our full-time reaction. We're going to be talking about where did it all go wrong. It's a very disappointing end to a game that it's never easy, let's be honest. Rugby Park on the plastic pitch, Celtic don't often have it easy there. So have a wee think about your man of the match, gentlemen, and please keep the comments coming in. We're going to be here for another 30 minutes talking about your reaction to the performance today. Very disappointing. And my biggest concern, I guess, would be that lack of creativity on the bench. Two players in Tommy Roderick and Lee Griffiths who were missing today, and they're the type that you would be looking to throw on maybe 10 minutes from the end. Colin, overall, what's your thoughts on that performance?
I think, in terms of possession, we've done really well. I just think there's still a lack of creating chances. Kilmarnock, as David says, done really well to limit us to shots from outside the box. But it's a performance that we really shouldn't be putting in. We are a better side than that, and we've not shown what we can really do today. To be fair to Celtic, I don't think we got out of first gear, and I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. It can be a good thing that we've got so much more to give, but when we needed it, it wasn't there, so it's quite concerning. But fair play to Alex Dyer and to his side. They've done what they came here to do. They've just shown that they are probably going to prove quite a few doubters wrong this season, but a long way to go. Hopefully this is one of the last points that Celtic dropped for a long time.
Kevin, you were looking a wee bit despondent in the final stages of that game. Do you feel that the changes that were made early enough by Neil Lennon?
I'm probably more disappointed that the changes never made any change whatsoever to the direction of the game, the way that we played. I always believe that Celtic have got a bit of magic in them, and there was no magic in that at all today. There was no energy, there was no verve, there was nobody willing to take a chance. We were reduced to having pot shots, which is basically, it's very frustrating. You could tell the players were frustrated as well. We've got better players than Kilmarnock, and Kilmarnock deserve all the credit today for the way that they set up. I'm not going to bemoan a Kilmarnock side playing like that. That's what they're there to do. It's up to us to break them down, and we failed to do it. It's not a great big deal. Right, we've dropped 2 points. We've had a poor performance, but looking back on it, any time that we've had a poor performance recently under Lennon, we've went on a run after it. So we've got to dust ourselves off and go again. But when you look at it, none of our big players played well today.
No.
Not one of them whatsoever. And it's one of these games where you just seem to just go, well, we can't be as bad again. We can't have 8 or 9 players again who didn't actually score more than 5 out of 10. I mean, we've usually got 6, 7, 8 players who are 7, 8, 9s out of 10s. Well, nobody there today was like that at all.
I wouldn't give anybody a 6 today. I mean, it really was. I suppose an adequate defensive performance, other than Julian's lapse with a penalty. But just a pedestrian. It was
a dreadful game of football
by Celtic, and a feeling of inevitability, and a sense that no matter what strings Neil Lennon pulled, nothing was really going to change this afternoon. You got that kind of sinking feeling from probably the hour mark onwards that nothing was going to change, other than a period of real domination immediately after Celtic scored, sort of 15-20 minutes after the goal. Really, I thought Kilmarnock gave as good as they got for the rest of the game, deserved the point. But I mean, it's disappointing. It's frustrating that, you know, man for man, Celtic better than every single player Kilmarnock have got.
Yeah.
And we haven't been able to make that quality count. And what's more disturbing for me is we never looked like we were going to make that quality count this afternoon.
We didn't react well to losing the goal, and maybe that's the biggest disappointment for me. We never reacted to losing the goal. We didn't have that spark to get back into the game. We just seemed to, Paul says I was looking a bit despondent in the last 10 minutes there, because in the back of my mind there was a wee voice going, take the point and get out. Just take the point and get out.
A 1-1 draw at Rugby Park, situation normal. It's not the end of the world. It's not the biggest shock either. And it may be, as I said a few moments ago, it may be some sort of a blessing in disguise, because this game has highlighted a number of gaps in Celtic's armoury. Central defence, we've spoken about. Lack of attacking options, we've spoken about. And I think James Forrest needs someone to push him for his place on the right hand side.
We mentioned centre defence. Can anybody tell us if Bargas is a good goalie? He had nothing to do.
Nothing to go on. Nothing to go on today.
Nothing to do. There was no chances in that game whatsoever.
He got close to a very well executed penalty. That's my takeaway from Barker's today.
What I did notice about him though was when the balls were coming into the area, he was coming out. He was kind of very commanding of his area. Whether he's got that understanding with his back to yet, we don't know. But he was coming out and collecting those crosses. That's one of the things that Bain wouldn't do. Bain would be very reluctant to come off his line.
He's a very Lennon type goalkeeper at 6'4" to command his box, same as what Foster was as well. Bain doesn't look like a Lennon type goalkeeper. But if we go back to that game, there was nothing there from both sides. Well, let's no beat about the bush. That was a horrible game of football.
2 set pieces, 2 goals.
Let's run through some of the comments. Thank you for joining us on a Celtic State of Mind's match day live stream. It's been a disappointing afternoon for Celtic at Rugby Park, where 2 points have been dropped and we're struggling to pick a man of the match. Psycho Candy, 1 minute left and we're playing wee passes to each other on the edge of the box. And yeah, nice bit of sound effect. Is that the special blue there, Kevin? Lawrence Connolly, man of the match, Kilmarnock, Eddie and Christie. Well, McGregor, I think, would be the player that stood out for me. Edward had a very, very difficult afternoon and worked tirelessly. And Christie, again, you know, he scored the goal. And obviously, when you're looking at, again, the situation with Griffiths on the bench that we spoke about at the beginning and for most of the first half, he's the boy you wanted on the bench for you, isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
To be fair, I think if we're going for a man, like not a Celtic player, but simply a player of the match, you've got to look at that back two of Kilmarnock with Broadfoot and Finlay. They actually did very, very well in containing Edward for a long
as they usually do
stretch
against
of that.
us.
Yeah,
as they usually do.
And Stuart Finlay, as we've already mentioned, great central defender. But I think I wouldn't disagree with what Lawrence said. I think that's probably our best 3 of the day.
But that's the sort of game. See, when Scottish football's got an opportunity to put itself in the shop window at the moment, with English domestic season finished, that's the kind of game that makes me squirm because you know, anytime I'm down south, I will defend Scottish football to hilt. I'm always bigging it up, but today it was an awful game to watch, as you said, Kevin, on a rubbish surface for the standard of football that we're trying to play. On a pitch that seemed very narrow and had definitely been shortened, and on a hot afternoon there was just no spectacle whatsoever. It was just a desperately disappointing thing to watch. I mean, it really was.
We need to handle that though.
Absolutely
We need to be better than that. We need to overcome that, and it is a state of mind for me now. Looking back on that, Julian's performance today was a state of mind. And yes, he handled the guy in the second half very, very well, but that's going to be forgotten because of the incident that we're just watching there just now. But as I says when I rewatched it at half time, Scott Brown needs to have a bit of the blame there as well. Getting on.
It was a weak challenge, Kevin, wasn't it?
There's 3 Celtic players there that should really cut that out.
It was a weak challenge and he was on the wrong side.
On the wrong side.
He was on the wrong side of him. Some more comments coming through. Keep them coming. We're going to stay here until 6:45 after the match. We've got another 15 minutes or so of discussion. Keep the comments coming via YouTube, Twitter and Facebook. Boston George 77. Thanks for joining us today, George. Hopefully you've enjoyed our chat a wee bit more than the performance. Dust yourself down and go again next week. Can't afford many games like this from now on. My question would be, will Lee Griffiths' calf strain have improved by Wednesday night? What do you reckon?
No.
No?
No.
He'll still be out?
He'll still be out. A jetty might be in though.
Right, is that hot off the press?
Is that hot off the press?
It's not hot off the press, no, but I think this performance might pull a few strings.
Well-deserved point for Kelly, absolutely. Blue Lou scene. I'm wondering where you get your name from. I do know that people used to go around the public toilets looking for Blue Loos if they wanted a wee bit of alcohol, but you know, you can maybe tell us if that is the case. What, eating Blue Loos? I don't know. I'll tell you what, you can't slag Fife off when you've just watched the great Scott Brown. And also, we spoke about Ollie Burke. He was born in Kirkcaldy. So did he slag Fife off, right? Terrible from Celtic. 0 positives. Early days though. Yes. I don't want to get a wee bit over dramatic about it, to be honest with you, but it was a poor performance from Celtic today. Jason Christie, that was a shameful display. There's going to be good and bad this season. I think it's all about strengthening the areas that have been identified prior, and it's been underlined by such a poor performance. Gordon Wilson, it's not a loss, and the chat's been the winner today. Great comments, and on to the next level. See you then, guys. Stay safe. Well, thanks for that compliment, Gordon. We will be covering every Celtic game this season, home, away, European. I will be here, hopefully, with a team of pundits, even when we go back to Celtic Park, because I'm having to give that pleasure up this season. And hopefully the pundits can help us out, as do the comments. So keep them coming in, Gordon, and thank you for that, and thanks for getting involved. The Psycho Candy, the worst part is how easy it was for Kilmarnock. Not a class performance from anyone on the park today. Just absolute rubbish from us from start to finish. What Kilmarnock did today was disciplined. And when you're watching even the highlights and some of the analysis at the end of the game, look how well organised Kilmarnock were.
It's the midfield. The midfield won the game for Kilmarnock today. Oh no, they never won the game, but you know what I mean. They kind of won the battle in there. When you look at Dicker and Power, yeah, okay, they get a yellow card, but they were still putting themselves about. You've got Tishbola in there as well. They're certainly they had a job and they knew what they had to do. They had to contain Celtic by any means. They were throwing their bodies on the line to stop some of the passes going through, as we just seen in the highlights there. So fair play to them, and all you can ask if you're a Kilmarnock fan is that they do that every week.
But it's easier to play that way against Celtic than what it is against a Motherwell, a Hamilton, or whoever else goes there. And it's very, I mean, when teams are that disciplined, what you're actually hoping for is one of their players makes a mistake. One of their players switches off, like Julian done for us. None of their players switched off. Kirk Broadfoot plays like bloody Maldini anytime he plays against us.
Yeah.
I thought he should have been booked at some point, no? For persistent fouling, was he? He should have sent him off then. Psycho Candy, playing like it's 3-1 in the 60th minute when it's actually 1-1 in the 89th minute. I think people have mentioned urgency. It's all about being able to craft open a chance, and we weren't able to do that.
Definitely.
Shocking performance, says Davy Boy Clan Donald. I don't think Celtic fans are happy. Thankfully, that's one less game to watch on that surface now. But it'll have no bearing on the title this early. Get the jokes practice for next week, Colin Powell. That's Francie again.
Who is this person?
Do you know him?
No.
Jason Christie, why does Forrest always want to come inside when we attacked there? There was no one on the outside, i.e. Forrest. It wasn't Forrest's best game, but there was worse performance out there
Absolutely,
today.
I wouldn't single out James Forrest, but you're right. He's doing what Scott Sinclair was doing towards the sort of second half of his Celtic career, just constantly cutting inside. Never seemed to have the confidence to beat a fullback for pace.
Mark Bradley, a neutral watching that, would conclude that both teams were lucky to get on the score sheet. Yes, we have dropped points there before, but rarely have I seen us so toothless, not panicking, but concerned.
I agree with the first part, but the second part.
Well, see, that's the thing. If you're a neutral watching that, didn't know who the champions of Scotland were, you wouldn't be able to pick them out between the two the way they played.
Definitely.
I mean, Celtic dominated it though.
Yeah, I thought
they did dominate possession.
The football today, such as it was played by Celtic, but we ran out of ideas on the edge of the box. It's like many away games I have stood and watched in the past. More often than not, we seem to have conjured up a winner from somewhere. Today was not that day. The most disturbing aspect of the entire afternoon was I can't recall a single clear-cut opportunity that we created. Not one. And the goal had an element of surprise or luck about it, call it what you may. It was a well-hit shot by Christie, very accurate, but it was there's a degree of sort of freakishness about the goal. And other than that, it was just long-range shots.
It was.
There's nothing else.
We had no idea, no second plan, Play like that on Wednesday and that'll be another struggle. That message comes in from Facebook. What's your thoughts about Wednesday night?
I'm quite concerned if that's the way we're going to play away from home. We have to do something totally different. St Mirren are a good outfit, although they might have took a bit of a doing today. I think they've recruited well. At the back, they've built a back four that's got a lot of experience playing in this league. I think there'll be a surprise package for a lot of teams this season, and we're going to have to do something totally different on Wednesday night if we want to come away with the 3 points, and we can't afford to drop any more.
What difference would you make? What changes would you make, Kevin?
Today's all have buts and maybes, but you have to have a look at it. We were 1-0 up there and cruising. We were dominating the game. So if we don't make that individual error, that probably comes a stodgy, like 1-0 victory.
Yeah.
And you go, that's the type of game that won us leagues. I'm not too concerned about Wednesday night because we go again, and I do not believe and I do not hope that our creative players can be as bad twice. That's what maybe I'm pinning my hat on the wrong horse. If you put a hat on a horse,
You don't, Kevin, but you can make up your sayings all day
Francie,
long.
you listening? That's the kind of jokes that you want to bypass.
Well, at least I realised myself what joke was becoming
Mixing of metaphors.
Hats on horses. Jays,
No, that was a donkey.
you've seen that. You're wearing a hat.
Aye.
Jays, okay, we'll just stop while we're ahead. Jays, 59-59, played into their hands, turning inside continually. Defenders able to sit in and stay in possession. All the credit's going to Kilmarnock today, I think. Everybody gets a 4 if you're lucky, says Jason Christie. There is always that reaction, and I'm not criticising you, Jason. There is always that reaction after such a disappointing performance. I think McGregor was probably the best performer today for Celtic. We're getting a wee highlights reel for Christopher Jullien, and it's a bit of a concern, I've got to say. It is a bit of a concern. We've spoken about the centre halves. It's not news, is it? We know that we need to strengthen at centre half.
Again, this is one of these things that they're highlighting the big boy up front for Kilmarnock. Okay, did he actually create any chances? Did he actually have any shots at goal?
I'm not sure he did, but he just put himself about, didn't he, Kevin?
It's a bit like the Dykes.
Aye. But he's all arms and elbows and big physical guy. But it was an uncomfortable afternoon.
They showed a highlight there on chasing a ball into the corner.
Yeah.
But it's quite easy for us to sit there and say that he never created anything apart from the penalty. But we're going on and saying Celtic dominated that game. We had 2 shots on target. You can't dominate a game and have 2 shots on target.
Well, I can't say Kilmarnock had any more.
No, but I wouldn't say either side dominated the game. I'd say it was a boring game of football that both teams killed each other out. I don't think there was... Kilmarnock set up to defend, Celtic set up to attack, and they met somewhere in the middle.
Celtic had most of the possession. I thought the football that was played by Celtic, but just a crying lack of creativity. That is worrying, but you know, let's not panic just yet. 1-1, second game of the season, Rugby Park. We could see it far enough.
Yeah.
But it makes a positive result on Wednesday evening more important.
A must. Boston George 77. El Hamid was his man of the match, and that says it all. Well played, Kelly. Hard fought point for us. El Hamid did play well. Is he a first pick on Wednesday night?
Probably not. Unless he's playing at centre half.
Unless he goes to a free at the back.
Yeah.
Gary Doonan, the voice of reason, Gary, you have become, so keep them coming as well, especially when we're putting hats on horses in the studio here. 2 years ago today, we lost 1-0 to Hearts in the second game of the season to go 6th in the league and went on to the treble. We've got one of our graveyard grounds out the way. That's a good point, Gary.
Yeah.
You know, there's always going to be, and I think this season more than ever, every single point dropped is going to be a disaster for Celtic. But we go out there on Wednesday night, and I think there will be changes. What changes would you make to the side for Wednesday?
I would probably bring in Chaman, move Christie out to the left, let Elyounoussi come off the bench. If we're going to go with the 3-5-2, then I would like to see Klamala partner Edward up front. Just give the game something a bit different.
Jim Haddo, come on guys, this isn't the Celtic View podcast. You're right, it's not, because we're in the top 20 in the iTunes charts, and they're certainly not. Every point a prisoner in this season of seasons.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. But
I think we've been quite critical of Celtic. I think
we've not sat on the fence anyway.
I mean, there's been no histrionics and there's been no shouting, and but
I'm just taking it for granted.
I'm
taking it for granted every time somebody types that was a tough watch that they're talking about Celtic, and I'm hoping you're talking about Rugby Park, Craig Hassel, 1888.
I know been talking about.
Putting hats on horses.
Gary Doonan, James Forrest hasn't had anyone pushing him for his place for 3 years. Great point, which also coincides with his best ever form, goals and assists. Incredible. So it's a fair point. We're looking at bringing somebody in to push on Jamesy Forrest. Someone commented the other day there about Paddy Roberts.
That was exactly what was going through my head right now.
Who can offer you cover on both sides. Should we just, has the horse bolted on Paddy Roberts?
We can put a hat on him yet.
He was. I mean, not being about the bush, he was disappointing second spell at Celtic, wasn't he? Never he captured the form that he showed during his first stint with the club. I mean, is he available now? Could we go and get him? I don't know. Last where was he? Last sighted at Middlesbrough.
Middlesbrough. The loan deal ends this pre-season, so back to Manchester City, back to the parent club, and I think he's got 1 year left on his current deal.
I think part of the problem was when Roberts came up for his second spell, we gave him the number 7 jersey, and that's a hard one, especially when you come up to Celtic to live up to the expectations of that number. So bring him back up, I would say, if he's available. I know a lot of people will say, well, that's not really going out and looking at the scouting and what's out there and what's available, but see, with this season being as important as it is, if you know there's a good player out there and you've had him before and he knows what to expect, then I'm all for bringing him in.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that.
What I'd like to say to everybody who's tuned in today, because we have had loads and loads of people tuning in, is thank you very much for joining us on A Celtic State of Mind. We are going to be covering every game this season. Well, I'm going to be covering. I'm going to be asking these guys to attend as well, but I think once we get back to the games, the numbers might diminish slightly. Get involved, make your comments, watch us on YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. Thank you, David Slight, Colin Watt and Kevin Graham, for your contributions. And please join us on Wednesday night for Matchday Live with A Celtic State of Mind.
Yeah, well.